Good morning, everyone. It is 9:01, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority with a roll call. Sorry, we had pledge. Do you want me to do pledge first, Lisa? Let's do pledge. I'm sorry, I caught her off guard. I'm left-handed, and sometimes I go backwards. Let me see. Mr. Griffin, will you lead us in the pledge?
Please join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to roll call.
Thank you. Chair Bybee,
Here?
Mayor Rscva, not quite here yet. Commissioner Lucy,
Here.
Mr. Stephen Rscva,
Here.
Mr. Andy Chapman, Ms. Shannon Keel, Mr. Rick Murdoch,
Here.
Ms. Ann Silver, and Ms. Jessica Sferraza. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item B, comments from the floor by the public. Do we have public comment?
We have two. The first is Mr. George Eddie Lorden.
Glad to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm here to speak today on things that have occurred in the past, and I hope we don't do it in the future. Well, back when we ended up approving this, for instance, this mayor's convention in Reno, I call it a misappropriation of funds, how we spent. It was budgeted at $1 million. We spent under $200,000 for this board to be used for a political tool. So in the future, I hope that we do actually do things that do bring people to town. I know there's a lot of good people on this board that love Reno, and congratulations, Ms. Bybee, for your new chair position. It's great to see you here. And so in the future, I hope they don't use this board for a political tool during an election cycle where, you know, the current mayor, we haven't seen her in 2 years. They pop up at election time and use boards like this to get, you know, a press release and free press. So I hope in the future we actually use it to bring in people into this community and tourists. And I appreciate your time very much, and thanks for doing what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lorton.
Second, we have Ms. Colleen Westlake.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Colleen Westlake, and I'm a candidate for school board. I'm here as a concerned parent and grandparent, and I think this is the appropriate place to pitch my plea. I would like to ask that we all be cognizant of the quality or lack thereof quality of education that's occurring in our state. We all want to see Nevada grow. We want to see our community be successful. And what's happening is our kids are graduating. They are not prepared. They're not college ready. They're not reading at grade level. They are not being able to do math at grade level. And these are the individuals that are our future. And what's going to happen is if we don't have an educated workforce, we are not going to get other businesses wanting to come here and invest in our great state of Nevada. I'm a fifth-generation Nevadan. I love this state. I have a lot invested in this state. I have grandchildren, my children, family, friends, businesses, acquaintances, and I think we should all try and address this because this is our future. There is over 1,000, not terribly over 1,000, I think it's 1,027 children that did not enroll in the public schools. And that to me is going to become a problem because that means less money for our public schools. Does that mean I think we should give the public schools that money if they're not deserving of it? No. But if 1,027 kids, their parents are not enrolling them, they are not producing a good product. They are not serving our community. The bar has to be raised, and the public schools need to get busy in the business of educating our children and not indoctrinating our children. So I ask you please to look into this as citizens like myself, and you sit on a board that's concerned with the commerce of the state. Please do some research. This needs to be addressed. Thank you very much, Colleen Westlake. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Do we have any further public comment, Madam Clerk?
None at this time.
Was there anyone else who wanted to make public comment?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just received a message from Mayor Rscva. She's trying to get on Zoom, on the Zoom link, and so she was asking if staff could send her the Zoom link so that she can get in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hearing no more public comment. Ms. Frossa?
Yeah, just, Madam Chair, just wanted to check, I think we're on Zoom, and I wanted to make sure that people could participate, public comment, if we had any public comment on Zoom.
We don't offer public comment on Zoom. We went back to a live feed, but, am I correct? Let me talk to our
Why?
attorney. Ben? We never have.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't offer public comment via Zoom. Open meeting law doesn't require it. If the board wants to at some point go that direction, it can, but it's not required.
Okay, I'd like to know why. I know it's not on the agenda, but I did discuss this with our CEO, and I think it's ridiculous, so.
We have gone back to live stream. We were, we had gone away from live stream, just FYI, for people, and the meeting was being recorded and then shown after, and we changed that. I asked that that be changed. So we are live stream for people to be able to watch the meeting live. Public comment is available either submitted ahead of time, like a lot of other boards and commissions, or people can come here in person. So there are two opportunities for public comment already. And for right now, that's what we're going to go with. And we could bring that back, Ms. Frost, if you want to at another time. But I don't believe we've ever offered public comment on Zoom. Okay, thank you.
I really would. This board has never made that decision. Every other board and commission, to my knowledge, offers this. So I don't see why we'd be any different. I mean, Reno does, the county does, Board of Health does, I mean, board after board. So I
Well,
know I'm under public comment, but.
They don't all, Ms. Frost, Sparks does not. We have Facebook Live. So other boards and commissions that stream have ability for public comment, which by law we have to, and that is through submitting it ahead of time in writing or showing up at the meeting. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our agenda. We're on item C, approval of the agenda of the September 22nd regular meeting of the Board of Directors. Looking for possible action.
I'll move approval of the agenda.
I have a motion by Mr. Chapman. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Murdoch. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. Moving on to item D, approval of the minutes of the August 25th special meeting of the Board of Directors. Do I have any corrections, additions, or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Ann Silver.
I have a motion to approve by Ms. Silver. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Murdoch. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item E, executive update. Mr. Harris will deliver our Rscva update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go through a very brief update this morning for the CEO update, as all the board members receive in detail with the monthly CEO report. And Chris, you're going to transfer that to? Get up the presentation. So this is really a recap of the presentation that we send out for the most part on the CEO report on a monthly basis. I do want to talk about a few things. First of all, we've had some great things happening with the arts. And if you go to the convention center or have been to the convention center recently, the first inaugural Reno Tahoe International Art Show happened earlier this month from the 8th to 11th, and it's really nice to have two art-related events happening. This is a quick shot of the actual show. Hope you had a chance to stop by. A lot of local artists that were featured here. The Rscva did participate in the special events during the augmentation process. And the second thing, this was actually taken yesterday. Our marketing team was over for the Van Gogh exhibition, and this is touring around the country. It's here at the same time. And it's just been extended through October. So that's some really nice things that are happening with the arts. On the last page of your board books, you will see that the snapshot is in here. I just want to point out a couple things within the snapshot itself. This snapshot integrates both marketing and sales within one page for the very first time. So you will see this. Now this trails. This is for July. And what I do want to note is that the September report includes August, so it's a little bit of off in terms of timing. But this is the 1 month recap to start the new year. And within that, the gross room night production within this chart was at 76% for the first month. It's now up to 101% when you include August, which you saw in your CEO reports. Also on the marketing notes, there were two standouts. First of all, the partner referrals for the first month was at 228% to goal, which is phenomenal. And really the reason for that is we have a lot of special events during the summer, so we see more people coming to our website looking for that information, and that skewed really strong. Also, earned media was 511% to the goal. Again, we had a great kickoff to the start of the year with a lot of exposure, and kudos to Ben and Celeste and our communications and our marketing team for helping to make that shine. Next thing I want to briefly touch on, Mr. Rscva and the sales team held the first of 4 quarterly DOS, Director of Sales, meetings here just recently. I think it was last week we had that. That was held both in person and on Zoom. And really, it was an update of opportunities, issues, anything that was happening with our sales team. Art from our tourism team was also a part of that, as well as our marketing folks. And we will have those once a quarter throughout the year to be able to engage with our stakeholders and different folks at the hotels. What I want to do now is give you a preview. These are 2 30-second spots that were just finished. They're going to launch at the start of October. And really, there's 2 different target audiences. This first video that I'm going to show you is really targeting C-suite decision makers. The second video will be around ad planners. And really, the C-suite is focused on elevating our perception within those decision makers. This came from our Customer Advisory Board, or our CAB, as recommendations. We went through that. And really, it's focused on upgrading our venues, hotels and gaming, arts and culture, dining and entertainment. So I'm going to play the first one here for you, and then play the second one back to back.
The Reno Tahoe of today, the destination beyond the sign, is a place beyond all expectations. Entrepreneurial, transformative, alive with energy. Little wonder we're attracting tech sector leaders and leisure travelers alike, all drawn to a thriving city that offers perspectives as bold as its opportunities are boundless. With an ever-evolving skyline that frames authentic experiences and welcoming smiles, Reno Tahoe is an urban oasis visitors find irresistible.
So you see within that, we've got Reno, Sparks. We really cover the entire destination targeting meeting planners. This flight will launch the first week of October and go through December, really targeting those folks. Again, there's 2 different versions. I'm showing you 30s. There's also 15-second versions that will be run digitally online as well. Here's the second one, which is really targeting planners.
No one works harder than Reno Tahoe to make event planning easy. On top of our support, we can connect you with trusted local resources to help create the event you've imagined. And because we operate and manage our facilities, you'll enjoy greater flexibility with fewer restrictions. All within a destination that is simple to navigate and simply unlike anywhere else. Take advantage of our Come See Fly Free program. and experience all Reno Tahoe has to offer.
Again, that's part of the 15 and 30-second spots that we have that will launch here in a couple weeks. Next up, NTA. So this is coming to our destination here, November 13th through the 16th. It is the third time in the history of this conference that it will be here. We are 39% ahead of 2021 registration for this. There's 476 people already registered, and they're anticipating about 650 to 700 overall. So we're requesting more rooms. This is a phenomenal, this is really dealing with connecting operators, tour operators with places and experiences. So it's really good for the destination that we have this. Next up, I want to briefly touch on the fires that took place in California and affected us. With that, one of the things that we did is we opened up the convention center for the youth groups per this board's direction. And as you can see here, this is a sample of the different groups that have come through. This was done between September 9th and 12th. We had 3 different halls that were being used, halls 1, 2, and 3. There were 33 different practices that were held here, and hundreds of youth sports were able to take advantage of the convention center during the fires. Next up, something that you'll see in January. We're just getting ready for this. This is the visitor profile report. Aaron Francis Cummings from Destinations Analysis will be here in January to address the board and the report. That's being finalized right now, so look forward to that when we come in January. And if I can get this to cooperate. There we go. Next, Lisa's going to hand out some things. One of the things that we talked about and was approved, the 3-year strategic plan, which this board has approved, then turned into the annual plan, which is on our website, which you can find, but also this is going to be handed out for board members. It is bound. It is really the guiding plan that we have for the year. In addition to that, there's some additional collateral that has been produced that you're able to see. And within the annual plan itself, again, this will talk about our 3 main pillars, the sales and marketing, destination management, and destination alignment. And then, obviously, all of our KPIs, the key initiatives, everything is included within that plan, and that's really our guiding force. One of the things that Chair Bybee had asked us to do is to make sure that we keep that annual plan alive, that we don't just put it on a shelf. And so we will have an executive address different points as part of that plan for every meeting. Mr. Rscva has been scheduled as part of today's meeting to go over that, and he will address those points as it relates to sales. What you're seeing now also is updated collateral that deals with meeting planners and all 4 of our facilities. Again, updated. We have that available, and we are distributing that to key stakeholders, and our sales team uses that as we go out and we sell the destination. One of the things certainly that has been brought up, we talked about it before, but updated collateral around the Bring Your Convention Home concept of marketing the destination for here, for people from here. We've had some success. We're working with UNR. Board member Silver helped us with an event that took place over the summer, and certainly Mike's team is out talking to people in the community. We got a lead just this week on that, and we're pursuing that as well. I'm just going to wind up my brief presentation before we welcome our special guest here this morning. This is some data that just came out within the last 2 weeks, and it's really in and around travel and what the trends are. This first chart talks about travel plans in the next 6 months, and there's a lot of factors that are going into that. Right now, at the end of August, 90% of people were still planning. It did take a brief dip, and we'll talk about why. Certainly, financial decisions are impacting people's plans to travel, whether it's inflation, the high cost of what's happening right now in our economy, and that has taken certainly a dip. Transportation costs, absolutely, certainly, I don't want to go against our special guest here this morning, but flying has become a challenge. Certainly prices are up across the board, and that is something that people are hesitating about when it comes to that. But certainly people are going to travel, whether it's by air or by car. With that, I'll open it up to any additional questions that the board has. If not, I'll turn it back over to Chair Bybee.
Any questions? Ms. Silver?
No,
Okay. Ms. Frozen?
I just want to compliment staff. I think this is awesome. To my knowledge, it's the first time we've done this, and to have our facilities here, in the detail of our facilities, so great job to staff. This is very well done. And then just second, for Charles, are you looking at the impact that I know we've approved our budget, but the impact of, it is starting to slow. We're seeing of inflation and what's that going to do? Because discretionary spending, even convention spending, for this board, of how we move forward in the future with that.
And unfortunately, Courtney Jager is unable to join us this morning, but we talk on a weekly basis in terms of budget, trends, where we're at. As this board has requested, one of the things that we do is we have a quarterly meeting set up for potential augmentation, what gets prioritized, how we allocate those funds. But we always go into the year a little bit conservative and then adjust based upon the trends that are there.
And then, so like different requests, are those going through the finance committee before they come here?
Correct. Anything with around augmentation or special requests like that would go through, we would prioritize what we want to do, take it to the finance committee, get feedback, vet it through there, and then bring it back to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Mr. Rscva?
No, two comments. One is, and I agree, this is great to have, Charles, and honestly, this is something, I'm gonna pin it to my jacket for every monthly meeting to come in, because we have so many distractions in this world of tourism and destination marketing, and that I think, at times, and I'm not saying we never veer out of this, but this is what we agreed on as a board to really focus on. I'm looking forward to, really keeping this at the ready. Secondly, just drilling back more to July to members for Rscva's comments. So we've seen a little dip on occupancy, correct? But room rate outweighed it? Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, and actually, we haven't released it. ADR for the month of August was like a tiny bit better than July. The visitation's down a little bit, but the ADR remains strong, and so we are healthy for the first 2 months, but we are monitoring, and I look at those numbers as soon as they come through. And Robert, I do want to comment, and kudos to Christina and Ben McDonald, who's kind of hiding there in the back, for all the great work to put together that annual plan, because it is a lift, and we want to make sure that it comes alive and that we carry that. And that is on the desks of our staff as well as online for anybody that wants to see that, both for the 3-year and the 1 year, and certainly now the board has it as well. So thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions.
One,
Oh, okay. Mr. Murdoch, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unbelievable. This is some of the biggest, great buildings. Our bowling stadium is there's only one in the world. One in the world, like our bowling stadium. Awesome. We have Livestock Event Center. We're back in that game, working on that facility. This is really where thank God we're getting here. This is the right way to go. Appreciate it. Excited because we're shouting. We have a lot of venues open. We have a lot of opportunity in Reno. Thank you.
And if I may, there's one thing that I didn't put in the slides, and Christina's going to probably yell at me afterwards, but in the corner of the room, you see a lot of the swag items that we have back there, and it was on display for this morning. We will source local vendors and local partners where we can to be able to use that to help promote the destination. And so those are some of the samples that we have where we've partnered with local organizations that help us when we market our story to be able to tell that better. So that's important that you guys see that. If you get a chance to stop by on your way out, we want to be able to celebrate our local businesses as well.
Thank you. And I would echo too, amazing. And really, as we looked at one of our goals for this board was really to make sure that we're utilizing all of our facilities. And because that's been our Achilles heel throughout this is really the facilities. And then, of course, we hit pandemic and everything shut down. And as we're rebuilding post-pandemic, to make sure those facilities are booked and all of our efforts are towards that. So really highlighting these facilities, I think will get us there. And I really appreciate all the work that staff did on that because I think we're absolutely on the right track. So anyway, moving on, we will go to item F1. Presentation update from the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. Mr. Darren Griffin, President and CEO of the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority, will provide an update on the Reno Tahoe International Airport. Thank you, Mr. Griffin, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Chair Bybee, good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you, Commissioner Lucy, Mayor Rscva, board members. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I love talking about our airport, and we have a lot of exciting things happening. So before I even get started, I want to thank board member Rscva for representing the airport on this board. The work between the two organizations is critically important, as you all know, and that connectivity is really, really important. And I also want to thank your appointee to our board, Trustee Chaplin from South Lake Tahoe, has done, I think, 5 or 6 years now of hard work on the Airport Authority Board and provides so much insight and help to us for many different directions. So I am blessed to have a fantastic board to work with, and they are working very hard with a lot of things that are happening at the airport. So I'm going to run through a presentation for you today, try and do this in about 20 minutes. I'm happy to take questions as we go, or at the end, whatever the board desires. I will run through a quick airport business update. How are we doing out at the airport? Airline industry update, give you a sense of what we're hearing from our airline partners, talk about the air service partnerships with our friends here at the Rscva, and then the infrastructure program, the More RNO program we call it, which is an area of huge focus for us for the rest of this decade. So how are we doing? First, it's great to get into a year where we are back to all of the special events that this board and your team work so hard to bring to the region. We see them manifest themselves at the airport. Of course, a lot of people coming through. The Conference of Mayors was a unique, one-of-a-kind effort that we were so proud to be a part of. Really unique security requirements when you bring that many elected officials in, and so it was a great challenge to work through. Burning Man, finally the first time I've seen Burning Man since I moved to the region, and things you can't unsee at times. But what a boost to the airport. I'll show you the numbers in just a minute, but it was astounding, the additional traffic that we saw. Jumpstart, some of you participated in Jumpstart, a nationwide air service conference bringing in many different air carriers and airports from around the country, everybody trying to do the same thing, to get more service to their communities. It was an honor to host that, and our team did a phenomenal job with that. Not listed on the event is, of course, last week was the air races, always a really big lift for the air race organization and our organization as well, to turn over that airport for a week to a different entity and let them kind of take off and do their thing. A really challenging week for the air races for many reasons, as we know. First, the smoke. A week ago, we were all living with almost a low visibility situation with the smoke, which really hampered the racing out there and stopped it for a couple days. And then, of course, the fatal accident on the last race of the weekend, terribly unfortunate. Our thoughts and sympathies go out to the family of Aaron Hogue, who was lost in that. So, unfortunately, a challenging weekend for the air races, and we'll be working with them going forward to see what next year holds. But a tremendous response from our staff at the airport, and for the emergency situation, a tremendous coordinated response from our first responders and first responders for the city of Reno, Washoe County, and our partners with the air races. That was great to see. It's what we train and practice for. You hope you never have to actually execute that, but they did a great job in a very difficult situation. We are grateful to have all the events back. It's really important to the business at the airport. And our business is good. You can see on the bar graph there, 2019, we were at 4.5 million total people flying through RNO. Like most airports, we took a very big downward move in 2020. And unlike most airports, we started recovering much more quickly, and we are grateful for that. This year, we're projecting 4.3 total million passengers. Actually think we may beat that. Depends on how this fall goes and get even closer to our 2019 numbers. But, you know, at the front end of the pandemic, a lot of economists and others were predicting 3 to 5 year recovery from the pandemic for travel and tourism, and we have seen it come back much quicker than that in our region. Similar to Florida beach markets, a lot of people took vacations last year to places domestically, and we benefited from that. This is what this year looks like compared to several other years, and I'll draw your attention to the blue line is 2022, And the gray line kind of right there with it is 2019. And we are basically all the way back to 2019 numbers. You can see there, Burning Man is that blue line bump that we just passed through. The high for the year, and based on our numbers, the high in almost a decade of numbers of people coming through the facility that we hadn't seen in a very long time. You may be aware some of the airlines add flights just for Burning Man, and so that pushes up our ability to move more people through the facility. You can see what happened there with the gray line in 2020, and the red line was the recovery. And the red line last summer was even busier than we are today. It was hang on for dear life kind of time at the airport. We saw numbers that were not predicted. There's no way you could have anticipated that response. This year we're kind of back to where we would hope to be for a full 2019, and if there had been no pandemic, we would have been growing from this point forward. So I am pleased to report that your efforts and the efforts of everybody have produced a great result at the airport and has us thinking pretty heavily about the future and what do we need to do to get ready for future growth in the region. A quick update on the airline industry. I don't have to tell you all, summer travel demand is high. It's high across the country. It's still high. I'll talk about that in a minute. Seats have declined. In Reno, our seats are down 10% from where we were in 2019. That is true at most airports across the country, and that is because of what happened last summer. A lot of the airlines tried to fly too much. They didn't have the staffing platform to do that, and you saw some really high-profile airline challenges where thousands of flights are being canceled, people are being stranded everywhere. That's bad for brand, it's bad for the customer, and leaves a really bad taste in people's mouths. So they all contracted to make sure they did not get over their skis, so to speak, this summer. There were still challenges in the system, and it's primarily driven by the pilot shortage that every airline is talking about right now. But it's not just pilots. It's also flight attendants. It's below the wing staff, the people out there towing aircraft and fueling and taking care of the baggage and whatnot. It is very difficult for them to hire people back. They are not yet at the staffing level they were at in 2019. In spite of all that, the load factor is in line with where it was pre-pandemic. Here, our load factor is 10% higher than it was in 2019. Airplanes are more crowded than ever. You experience that because of our strong recovery. Less seats, higher load factor because we have just as many people traveling. Fuel costs are high, just like we're paying a lot for fuel for our cars. So are the airlines. Those airlines that hedged in 2021 are in a little bit better shape right now. Many of them did not, and so that affects their net revenue. Average fares are higher. These are the highest fares I think we've seen potentially ever, depending on route. But so are rental car prices and hotel room nights, right? It's all connected, as this board knows. We are paying more to fly than we have before. Their costs are higher than ever before. We don't see it affecting our numbers right now, but as you enter a potential economic recession, we're watching for where that's going to hit our bottom line as well. A number of airlines will post modest profits. We've already seen quarterly reports where they've turned a positive quarter, which is great to see after what they went through in 2020, 2021. And air cargo demand continues to be strong. There we go. Talk a little bit about the work we do together, the two organizations. This is our current route map. In blue is the full year routes that we have. In yellow there are the seasonality that we have, the seasonal routes. The good news is we have a record number of airlines. The pandemic was good to our region with adding airlines actually, which was pretty rare to see. The most recent additions is Spirit Airlines last month in August launched for the first time in Reno, and earlier this month Sun Country launched for the first time to Minneapolis. We have, I think, 98% of the seats that are available in the United States are represented by the airlines on this list. We also have all the major alliances with the Star Alliance, One World, and SkyTeam. We are one stop from pretty much anywhere in the world, which is a great base to start from. I will show you in a couple of slides where we hope to grow this route network, working with our Rscva and Rscva partners, but this is a really good base. We're proud of where we're at right here with 20 plus nonstop destinations for a market our size, but we always want to grow more. I want to talk about AHA for a minute. 30 days ago, that route map looked even better than it did right now. We lost 10 dots off that map. They lasted 10 months, unfortunately, and a lot of people in this room worked very hard to make them successful here. It was exciting to have them launch. It reminded people of the Reno Air Days to some degree. It was a unique business model, and it was a unique time to launch a new airline coming out of a pandemic to small markets. They served 10 at various frequencies throughout the week. Number 11 was going to open up August 31st. And like everybody else, when a small startup airline goes out of business, you typically find out the morning of. And that's when we found out as well. It was a text at 6 in the morning that we've shut down. We're going Chapter 11. And it's frustrating, it's disappointing, it's sad. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to cash flow. Their financing dried up on them. The financial markets are contracting right now. I think we're all aware of that. When you're a startup airline and you're relying on capital to bridge you through to where you can generate enough cash to pay your bills, when that goes away, it ends it instantly. And that's what happened in this situation. Some of these routes were more successful than others. We're grateful that they proved out Spokane, Boise, and Palm Springs for us. We have solid business cases now that we are already working on based on the numbers that they had already sold, the tickets they sold, or the actual flights that they did. Some of the other markets weren't as strong. You saw them adding and subtracting as they went. And a lot of people worked really hard with the AHA team and ExpressJet, and maybe someday we'll have some version of this back again. But lessons learned, good data was gained, and a lot of great effort from our community to support this. The other, I would say, challenge we're closely watching is what's going on with JetBlue. They made a big move to acquire Spirit Airlines. It was essentially a bidding war to acquire Spirit, as we all watched, and JetBlue prevailed. 6 weeks ago, they made a big move with their route network and cut essentially 39 routes, just dropped them from their system. We were grateful we weren't on that list. If you look at November 21 to November 22, they're flying 47 less routes than they flew before. They're already eliminating overlap between the existing Spirit network and their network. It doesn't typically happen this quickly, but they are moving quickly. We see opportunity with the merger. We are in close conversations with them around their plans here. They're pulling back to more of a seasonality approach with our market. We're working closely with our partners here at Rscva and RASC. JetBlue was a really important gain for this region in 2015. This region worked very hard to get JetBlue. I've learned all that history through this conversation. JetBlue is a great partner, and they want to be here. We have great relationships with them, and we are confident we will work through that. If they were going to cut us, they would have cut us like they cut many other markets in August. So it takes a lot of hard work, though, and a lot of partnership, and we have that here. This is the route map we want to add. So you saw what we have today. We have a big appetite, I think we all do, for filling in some of the gaps in our route network. And this is what we're working closely with your team, Christina and Mike and Art and Trish and Hassan and Tina from our team. A lot of conversations going on right now of how can we prioritize investment. We want to spend money really wisely on marketing and things like that. Of course, getting Atlanta back, hanging on to New York. With the Spirit JetBlue merger, Florida becomes, I think, a strong opportunity. Our number one unserved destination is Hawaii. It has been number one. We've talked to Alaska and Southwest and Hawaiian Airlines about that. There are more people flying to Hawaii every day from here through other networks than anywhere else. So right now, it's really just a function of pilots and aircraft. The MAX is the right airplane to fly from our high elevation airport all the way to Hawaii without taking a penalty. For example, the A321, you have to leave people behind to put enough fuel on to get all the way there. The MAX does not require that. So the MAX is the right platform, and an airline can generate a profit. And the MAX is in the system, and they are all taking deliveries of it. Some as many as 3 to 5 a month, as fast as Boeing can build them. Multiple airlines are flying them. I flew the MAX 9 yesterday to Seattle and Alaska from here. It's here, it's operating. So lots of great dots to work on there, and this is where our partnership is so important. And it really comes down to educating key airline decision makers. At the end of the day, it's just people making decisions, right? Those routes don't appear by magic. It's somebody deciding, yes, we're going to make that investment, we're going to take that risk. We're always monitoring the route health, working with airlines to understand how are the flights doing, where are your concerns, where do you see that you like. We've been on the road talking to airlines. I was in Seattle yesterday with Alaska. We were in Dallas last month talking about our infrastructure program and what we can do to add air service. So all the airlines are constantly on our radar, if you will. The biggest thing is educating airlines on the growth in Northern Nevada, the work of this body, the work of what's going on with all the homes being built around the region, people moving here. If you don't live in Northern Nevada, you don't know what's going on here. And that is the job that our two teams are working on together, of educating decision makers, the growth that's happening here, the diversification of the economy. So we do a lot of different things. You can see the list there, but the bottom bullet is the most important, and that is speaking with one voice and working together with RASC, Rscva, the Chamber, Travel Nevada, all of us pulling and rowing the same direction to educate those folks and get those investments into our region. We show this slide in all of those visits, which is new home starts in our region in the catchment area for our airport. It's a huge catchment area. People are driving from long distances to get to the airport to get their flights. And this group knows the growth that's going on in Northern Nevada, the demographic shifts that are occurring. We see those manifest themselves at the airport with parking impacts that have been well documented. Last week we were on the verge of being out of parking again, and I don't have a good explanation why, but it's a good problem to have. But we still see a lot of demand and growth happening at the airport, the destinations, and passenger numbers. And so this is what we're talking to the airlines about. And also, we're trying to understand who the customer is. The customer is changing rapidly in many markets, especially here. And so we worked with Rscva and EDON to do a survey about 6 months old now, so you don't know how long you can rely on survey data anymore, but we're still gonna go with this. I'll show you some results that we're interested in here in a second. But we had a great response. We partnered on a travel survey to try and understand who's moving here and what are their plans for travel, you know. And of course, for us at the airport, we're really interested in the air travel component of that and making sure that we're ready for it. A few key takeaways for us is that generally business travel is where people are still scratching their head. Is that going to get back to what it used to be in 2019? Is business travel something different now than what it used to be? Is it more blended because more people are working from home or can work from wherever they're at on vacation? What we see as leisure travel, more of that is definitely in our future, and that is something we need to be getting ready for from an infrastructure perspective at the airport. A lot of people, when we took this survey in March, 34% of them had already flown once this year, and that was 3 months into the year. And based on what I've seen this summer, that number would be a lot higher at this point. And it's great to see, but it also puts a lot of pressure on us in that it has been more than a decade since any of you have seen a significant project occur at the airport. And we are at the point now where we are a little behind, I would say, based on the growth trajectory that this region has. And earlier this year, we launched the More R&O program, so a branded, multiple project effort to get our infrastructure where it needs to be. It's really comprehensive. We've been working on the airfield for a number of years now, and that is, of course, the most important component. Runways and taxiways have to be in great shape, and we are lucky in that we have a fantastic airfield. It's well positioned. There's a tremendous amount of capacity there. We are nowhere near the airfield capacity, but you have to keep it in great shape. So we are turning our attention to the terminal area, the landside areas, and More R&O is really focused on looking at the drawing there. First and foremost, the ticketing hall, which is where a lot of congestion occurs. And in the next few weeks, we will kick off a project to push out the front of that ticketing hall. We have a really 30-foot deep curb there that's kind of wasted space. So we are going to push that out closer to the street, create a larger ticket hall. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a minute. To the left of the screen there, you see the big blue square, Conrack structure and GTC. So that's Rental Car Center and Ground Transportation Center. And right now, it's all in our existing public parking garage. We need that space back for public parking for all the obvious reasons. And our rental car partners need 3 times the space that they have today. And there's no ambiguity around those numbers. We've scrubbed them with industry experts multiple times. This is an incredibly strong rental car market. And the biggest constraint to people getting cars is our infrastructure right now. So this is almost a city block there along Terminal Way, and I'll show you some pictures of that. That's a 30% design. That's a public-private partnership. Also happening is Concourse Work. I'll talk about that. Our concourses opened in 1980. And it will be the biggest part of our redevelopment program. You see on the list there to the far right, future airport entrance, and on the left, future airport exit. All of our entry and exit occurs at one location on Plum Drive, which is a single point of failure and not a great airport model. You see typically an airport loop road. When you're traveling around, when you're going in and out of airports, it's a loop system. We'd like to get to that here. Some of that can't really occur this decade based on NDOT work that has to happen out there at the freeway. The exit can probably happen sooner than that. But it's important that we have a plan, we have a vision for what is the right transportation model through the airport facility. So a little bit more on each of these components. Ticketing hall needs to get larger. We need to add restrooms. We will also be replacing the roadway in front of the ticketing hall, which is a really difficult project to do. You're going to see the inner 3 lanes of that roadway close within the next couple weeks, and that will be to work on the ticketing hall, and then eventually we will replace all of that concrete because it's failed at this point. If you take a look at it, it's coming apart. It's a hard place to work. It's disruptive to people who are trying to drop off their customers. We will have an aggressive communication plan, signage plan. None of that makes it more pleasant. It just makes sure people know what's happening. We will invest in technology in the ticketing hall. The airlines all want more kiosks. We don't have places for more kiosks. Less and less people actually need to go there and do something with a ticket. You're dropping a bag. You're printing a bag tag, tagging your own bag, and taking it to a drop-off point. We'll also add security along the front of the terminal building, bollards against vehicle-borne threats, something that you see standard at many airports now. It's a $32 million project. It starts soon, within the next couple weeks, and we should be done by the end of 2023. Just a couple quick pictures. It adds a whole new throughput corridor. Typically, if you're in there and you're dropping a bag and there's an airline queue, it just cuts off the building. You can't get through, and you literally have to go outside and walk around to come back around to the checkpoint, and that is not an efficient ticketing hall. So we will add space. We will raise the ceiling up. It'll be more open, more inviting. It'll like a more modern ticket hall. The front of it, people tell us they walk into the windows. We see people walk into the windows. The windows and doors should look different from each other. We will make that much more apparent and just clean up the front of the ticketing hall so it has a warm, inviting experience hanging on to the modern mountain theme that you see at the airport. The rental car center, we need additional public parking. This facility will get the rental cars out of our structure, which frees up 700 spaces for us. We also need a vastly improved rental car and ground transportation customer experience. So this is going to provide that. You're going to have to walk a little further, and that is the key here, that you will walk out of baggage claim, and it's a 600-foot walk, and you will curve around to that location that I showed on the map. So, but that will be true for everybody, whether it's Uber, Lyft, a cab, a shuttle, you're renting from a brand, all of that is in the same location, a four-story garage structure, very modern. One of the key pieces there is we think it'll be the first garage built in the United States to fully accommodate 100% electric vehicle fleet. We don't know exactly when that is going to get here, but we know we are already going down that direction. And if you don't build it with that in mind, then you're trying to do something after the fact and add conduit, add power to a concrete structure, which is expensive and difficult to do. So we are excited. Our goal here is net zero for this structure. We are working with NV Energy on solar power, generating solar on the top level, and then storing power, buying it off-peak periods, and really being as close to N zero as you can get with a structure designed for automobiles. Someday there will be driverless cars. We need to be able to accommodate that in this structure as well. The rental cars have differing appetites for this. Some are leaning in, some are more a wait-and-see approach, but you only get one shot to really get it right, and so we are working with our P3 partner to make sure every spot is wired for charging. And of course, charging comes at different speeds, level 1, level 2, level 3. All of that is being worked out and designed, but more importantly, it's get the right backbone in place. And our conversation with NV Energy is really important, and it's a great one. They are very bullish on this and have basically told us we can bring as much power as you need, but let's talk about how you can store it and self-support yourself during that 4 to 9 p.m. peak that we all hear about, that try to not pull from the grid. This is a 30% drawing, so to the right of the screen is the covered, ventilated walkway. It's not a heated and air-conditioned facility. That's really expensive and really kind of unnecessary. We don't want people getting wet or windy. It may be a little cooler, a little warm during the summer months, but It'll be a nice covered structure. From the minute you walk out baggage claim, you will be in a protected environment. You will curl around to the left, and that's the approach into the new 4-story garage structure. It will not have the traditional kind of ticketing area or rental car lobby where all the brands are lined up and you have a counter. The rental cars are moving away from that model. You will be wayfinded to whatever level your brand is on. Many of us are using our phones and rental car apps now. The app will guide you to what level you're going to, where is your car exactly. It may take you to a space, it may take you to a row where you pick out your vehicle. But this was the rental cars approach now. When they were building new structures, they were moving away from that kind of expensive overhead where you go and get in another line so somebody can try and sell you gas or a car seat or things you don't want to buy. But if you do need that, you can take care of that transaction at the kiosk that will be at that location. The elevator core is on the left. That's going to be a phenomenal opportunity for a statement piece of public art built into the architecture. We will spend a lot of time thinking about that. This will be, as you leave, you've dropped somebody off, you've made that left-hand turn, this is what you're going to have to the right. It dramatically changes the look and feel of the airport at that point. And their existing structure with the washing and the fueling, all of that gets demolished and opens up that space as well. I mentioned the key point here is the concourses. Both concourses, B and C, opened in 1980, built to the 1976 Uniform Building Code. We went from 0 gates to 22 gates. They are 42 years old and aging out. It's infrastructure that is slowly dying as infrastructure does. And so we're at the point whether you reinvest significantly in existing infrastructure or you do something different. And we've spent the last year and a half studying the 2 concourses, looking at what are the options that we have available to us. The customer experience is slowly degrading. You fly to a lot of other airports from Reno where they have done major capital projects, and your experience as a customer is very different from what you have here. We can't afford to fall behind in terms of the experiential piece. We also want to be careful about what we invest in. You know, people expect to get charging wherever they're sitting. We don't have the electrical backbone to do that. We literally can't offer that in this concourse. You want food close by. You want all the concessions that you're used to when you go to Salt Lake or LA or Denver or Sky Harbor. They're all reinvesting billions in their airports. We know we're going to continue to grow, and we need to be ready for significant growth in the next 20 years, and airport infrastructure is very slow to build. Over the 18 months, we've really narrowed it down to 2 things. Either you invest in the existing structures, you stay with what you have, you update them, you add power, you add seismic capability, you re-roof them, and you buy 20 years of life. And that alone is very expensive and very invasive, because to do that, you have to get into structures that are being used. And when you're dealing with 1976, 77 building designs, the as-built aren't great, and you never know what you're going to find. And there's a lot of concern around that. The other is to build new. And really, this is where we've spent most of the summer looking at, is it time to just do what they did in the late 70s and make that bold move and build 2 new concourses. And if you're going to build new, you have to add gates. That has been a conversation with the airlines this entire year, is if you're going to invest $500 million in airport infrastructure, the airlines generate revenue from the gates. We've had the same number of gates since 1980. So what you see there on the right is where we are leaning at this point. It's 28 brand new gates, hold rooms that are twice the size of what they are today, enough space to put concessions close to the gate, restroom facilities, amenities that our customers are used to, and room for growth. 28 gates. In this model, we kind of keep the maxes on the main line there, and you put the regional flying out at the end of the piers. We have lots of flexibility. We've been looking at this. We've been discussing it with our board. We've been making the road trips to talk to the airlines. The airlines are in support of a new build, which is no easy feat to get airline support to spend $500 million, but they see the value opportunity here. They see the growth in Northern Nevada, and that it is time to make that generational investment. And if we don't do it now, we'll be here in 2030 talking about what do we have to do to improve our facilities. It won't get cheaper, and it won't get easier, and we know that. So this is teed up on October 13th. Our board will take kind of the final look at this. We'll present to them what this might look like, and then ultimately our board adopts a preferred alternative, and we continue moving the process forward. The airlines will speak in support of this, and I just can't overstate how important that is, that It isn't always like that. Sometimes airports have to go their own road, and airlines don't like it, but you do it anyways. We always want to be in strong partnership with our airlines here. We want to make investments that they support. Ultimately, their rent is going up when we go borrow money to do something like this. And so it's important that we stay aligned on that. Overall, this program is not $1 billion, but it's getting close. I avoid the B word because that gets airlines really blood pressure high. But when you add it all up, everything that we're doing for the rest of this decade, it is a generational investment in airport infrastructure, all designed to meet the growing need of Northern Nevada, to make sure the experience, first and last, that people have when they travel by air through here is what we all want it to be, and that starts with infrastructure and starts with every component. Customer doesn't care if it's a parking garage project or a project at the gates or in the ticketing hall. It's just the airport and the airport experience. And so we keep that in mind. That's why we brand it as a single entity. And when we work through this, all these projects have to work together. They have to talk to each other. We always have to keep our focus on what is your experience as a customer as you come through the facility. And it will take us the rest of the decade to do it. Unfortunately, this is just how long it takes to do airport infrastructure. We can't tear down 2 concourses and stay in business. We have to do them one at a time. You actually build one next to the other and then open it and then tear down the one it replaced. And that is a stair-step process and takes time. We put a lot of things on top of each other here, and we run the risk of creating an experience that is not sustainable. And so we really have to look at all of the projects, all of the efforts, and make sure we keep ourselves in business, that we match the growth through the decade. And at the end of it, hopefully by the end of 2029, end up with an airport that doesn't look like it does today, but represents where we're going as a region, as something everybody can be proud of, and still keeps us a cost-effective airport. When I'm in front of airlines, I'm showing them numbers. I have to be able to show that we compete with other airports, and we didn't just become the most expensive airport in America for them. So we're working very hard to find other sources of money, working very hard with our delegation to really be a project that they can support, that when bill money is coming out, that when you talk about airport improvements, this is the poster child for an airport infrastructure investment and improvement that supports unique, one-of-a-kind infrastructure that supports a really large catchment area and remote. You know, people that don't live here don't realize it's a 7-hour drive to Vegas. They still want to come see me when they're going through Vegas, and so we explain the basics to a lot of key decision makers. That is it. I think I did it in close to 20. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Obviously, after my 42-year career, spending many, many hours in different airports around the country and around the world, I totally appreciate, what you're looking at doing here, and really the needs from, whether it's being able to even get a signal because everybody around you has 2 or 3 devices and you can't even connect, to the comfort of your concourses, to the ease of parking. I mean, the terminal, all of it just makes incredible sense. And I appreciate the fact that you're moving into the looking forward. We're not building just for today, that really envisioning forward, whether it's EVs or just the size and expansion, doing it bigger makes sense, even though that's a lot to do at this point in time, but appreciate that. And considering there's some airports, I think San Francisco, the joke was, it was under constant construction, 40, 50 years or something. It was a never-ending construction. And some airports we go into, every time you go in there, there's still construction. And so doing this and getting it done, I think, is super important to bringing more people here and making their experience what we want it to be. Do I have any questions from the board? Mr. Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Griffin, unbelievable job. I think I'm thoroughly impressed with the layout of the master plan. This, being that it was in the works, I know for a long time prior with your predecessor, but having since you've taken the helm, you really have brought the project to life, and what I like to say in government, we do a lot of analysis, paralysis by analysis. But you've actually put, and I think that's from your experience in Portland and what you've done with PDX, it shows that you're really taking that initiative here in Reno. The only question I have is on the parking exit for when you move the rental cars out of the parking structure currently and into the con rack, once that's completed, will the payment booths stay where they are located currently, or will those move to the new airport exit at that time?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Lucy. The public parking exit plaza will remain where it's at. And the thing we're looking at there is right now you do that long kind of curve back around and you have all of the merging that's going on. Can we exit directly out onto terminal? The rental car center will work off the intersection of Villanova, which is already sized for that. They've modeled all of that. And so this does take all of the rental car and ground transportation traffic arriving and all rental car traffic off of our loop roadway, which is a great benefit for easing up congestion and for those that are coming out of the exit plaza, much easier experience. We're hoping to make that exit right out onto terminal. That's one of those things we have to work with the city of Reno on in the years ahead and figure out how can we do that. But that is the plan right now.
So just through my recent travel, I have one suggestion at the ticketing or the payment plaza as you're leaving. You usually have an actual full cashier open, and then the other are your express exits that are utilized mostly by credit card. However, the sign shows no cash in red. And so what most people see they see express exit, but they see that no cash and immediately think that it's closed. So just the signage on that exit, it pushes people over to the full cashier.
Which is
and
long.
So if that was just a change of color or something or credit only in green or something of that nature, it would make those express exits, because I've seen it get backed up, especially in the more recent months when we've had overwhelming that people are only going to the cashier section instead of utilizing all 4 of those lanes to get out. And I think it's just because of that red no cash, it's confusing for individuals getting out of long-term and short-term parking. So just a recommendation that noticeable every time I go through it. It draws people in there all the time. So
and fewer transactions are actually cash-based to begin with. So I'm sure we can improve that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want to do is sit in a line at 11 o'clock at night. So thank you.
All right, and I have done that.
Yes.
Ms. Silver?
Yes, Mr. Griffin, thank you so much. Great presentation, and I think we're all looking forward to all the work that's going to begin and get done. I do have a question. Is there still a plan to enter through that roundabout that was devised by NDOT on Plum? I wasn't clear from the photo.
Ultimately, our landside development plan would show us moving away from that and not having that roundabout entry and creating a new entry off of terminal. The kind of the further you put the entry from the exit, the better that loop traffic works. Good. So it would require a right turn on terminal, and then kind of right there just past the Aloft and Hyatt, you'd make a left into a new kind of grand entrance to the airport. That would kind of frame the entrance. So that's the plan right now. Years away, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, many years away.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I see that Mayor Rscva has a question. Hillary, are you there? Maybe unmute.
I think it's just the volume.
Okay, did I have anyone else who had a comment while we're trying to connect the mayor? Ms. Rscva.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that just let the board know what a rock star Darren is. I mean, we as a board, and I just want to acknowledge my fellow trustee Chaplain. Since he's taken the helm, I think we're just meeting and meeting and meeting. We have a lot of meetings at the airport, but just all of this work, I think I laugh because he's experienced presidential visits. I think he's we've gotten him, he came in and has just done so much with the expansion, air service. And I just, a couple things, we're sensitive to takeoff and landing fees with the airport with this expansion, because right now, if you see the chart, we're actually very much on the low side. And the second thing I'll add that I think is important and federally is on the FTC charges. And we discussed this at our board last meeting, and some synergy probably around Rscva and also the board supporting that, because the FTC charges across the country, I mean, they haven't risen in how long, Darren?
The PFC.
I'm sorry, PFC, the passenger
Yeah,
facility charge you
2001.
see on your ticket, 2001.
Yeah.
And that's really important to the region, because in order to do these projects, that fee is going to have to be amended and changed. So I think support to the federal delegation from boards like the Rscva. So I just wanted to mention that. But and also we are tracking, as Darren said, that JetBlue flight, which I know everyone around this table, whether it's Rask, I know Chapman, Mr. Rscva, I think Keel, everyone on this board is big on air service, and is Rick. My friend over here says, use it or lose it. This has been huge for air service development and what we're doing here in the region. So I just wanted to point that out on the PFC. Sorry, Darren.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murdoch?
Thank you. First comment I'd like to make is, Darren, great job. Team, great job. You guys, you're wonderful. I mean, you're one of the shining stars, and I look at this community as the region and the community, but if you don't have a strong airport, you guys do so much for this community economically. We're providing jobs, providing, helping the stakeholders, so forth and so on, but it's unbelievable. You're a catalyst for this community. And same as Rscva, I think these two organizations are catalysts. It's absolutely imperative that we're singing the same song. It sounds like we do a great job at it, and appreciate you. First couple things. One is, you made a comment about that you add flights for Burning Man. That's amazing that this destination can go tell airlines that we've got an event and they add flights. Kudos to you guys. That is, a lot of destinations don't think like that.
Yep.
And you guys going out and advancing, we've got an impact of Burning Man.
Yeah.
Or any event. It's unbelievable that you can add flights. I remember we did it one time. You guys were so good for Safari Club. We had to give them a promise to get them, and I think that's absolutely imperative. The other side of it is, what I think is important too is your
ID followed by pound.
when you expand the airport, you also give everybody locally, all the contractors here, it's called the cycle of life. Thank you for that. If you award those contracts to the locals, I mean, what a way to keep our community.
You entered 8790273.
Really appreciate that. And like I said, we're unique in an airport to be able to have, we're not like any other destinations. We have mountains, we have casinos, we've got airport, we've got Tesla. We're so unique, and I think it's amazing that you keep telling everybody that, because the airlines know they got to be here. And again, the last thing is, we're all in this together, but if you don't have butts in seats, you don't have heads in beds, you don't have taxes. So PFCs or room tax. So absolutely.
Welcome to Zoom.
Imperative.
Enter
that we
your meeting ID.
Stay on those goals, because those what make everybody's budgets go round. Thank you.
Thank
Good to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Do we have Mayor Rscva on?
7902737.
Okay, I know our techs are working to get
This meeting ID.
Mayor
does not
Rscva
exist.
on.
Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
You know what, we'll go ahead and move through, and then we can come back when we get a connection, so that the mayor
You have
can.
not entered any numbers. Please re-enter.
Yeah, I'll have Charles check with staff, and when we get a connection, we'll ask her to join us with her comments.
Madam Chair, I have just one question that actually came
You
to
entered
mind that I'd like to ask Darren, if you don't mind.
79002.
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Griffin, one of the things too that I know that are been very important, not only just the PFCs and the routes and getting tourists here and travelers here, but we've been focusing a lot on the cargo. And you mentioned that in your slide, that cargo is back up, and we've been heavily reliant, and that has been a big standard for us. One of the discussions I know we had during the master planning interviews and updates was a change of that cargo area, maybe to the southern portion of the airport off of Airway Drive. Is that still in play?
Yes, thank you for the question, sir. That is still the plan. We have spent the last year doing a request for proposals for an air cargo developer. We have selected one, and we are in preliminary discussions now.
Enter your participant ID,
Ultimately, our master plan really guided us. The air cargo and air carrier passenger traffic are in conflict with each other as we continue growing. And so cargo is what moves to the Southwest Quad.
Are in the
I think
meeting
we've
now.
learned through the
There is one
RFP
other
process
participant in the
that's going to be
meeting.
extremely expensive, and the developer world is only going to bear so much of that cost. I think we also see economic impacts already on air cargo operators. While it's strong, FedEx and Amazon are both reporting headwinds, I would say. So I think that's going to be a challenge. Part of the goal here is to work with them like we have worked with the airlines and to identify the value proposition so that we can continue growing air cargo here and creating a facility where it can grow. We are full at this point. All of our facilities are occupied. All of the parking positions are full. So we do need a plan for growth. We did not have that necessarily on our financial horizon where we would need to make an investment. We're realizing we may need to do that, and how do you factor that into everything else we're doing?
Well, and the one reason I ask is that you have the availability, you oversee Stead Airport, the Reno Stead Airport as well, and being that a majority of that industrial and commercial infrastructure is moving to the northern parts of our valleys, at least a majority of ours here in Washoe County is moving out there. Is there potential of adding that cargo space out there and landing those sizable planes? Because I know some of the restrictions that the FAA have recently instituted is the thickness, increasing the thickness of the tarmac to facilitate the landing of these larger planes, because what the standards were 20 years ago, we've increased the size of planes and weight capacity on those runways, hence the reason we're redoing 18 and 20 at RTA. So if we're going to think about that, is that something that the RTAA is looking, I mean, not RTAA, but the Airport Authority is looking at?
Yes, and we have looked at that. I would say part of that is, one, airport limitations, and to your point, there's infrastructure limitations, also terrain and navigational aids for landing aircraft of that size. R&O is the best equipped to handle that. That's something that the carriers themselves look at. There has been some minor interest instead, but mostly they want to be in the heart of where everything is at, which is R&O, close to the freeways. So generally, I would say their mindset is R&O is still where they want to be for navigational aids, for infrastructure abilities, and for physical location. This keeps coming up as a conversation point, though. Is Stead have a role in air cargo? Maybe not as the air cargo location, but is there some ancillary opportunities at Stead that could feed? So I think that's something we're going to have to continue looking at, especially if it's a tens of millions of dollar investment to support air cargo, 5 to 10 years from now at R&O. Nothing happens right away. This is a long-term process, as you know, but we do need to be thinking about what is the plan in 2030 for air cargo as it continues to grow. There are carriers that we don't have in this market that we would like to have in this market, and we need infrastructure to support them. Great. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. I think we're still working on our connection. Am I correct? Yeah, we're going to go ahead. We've got to move on. We're way far behind. We've got a lot of business to conduct. Thank you so much for your presentation, informational, and I know that, obviously we work closely together with you and look forward to future updates. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you for the
We're going to go ahead and
opportunity.
move on to our next agenda item, which is item F2, annual plan update. Mr. Mike Larraguetta, Vice President of Sales, will provide Board of Directors with a sales update on the current fiscal year initiatives to address two of the priorities within the annual and 3-year strategic master plans. Mr. Larraguetta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Mike Larraguetta, for the record. I don't know if it was something I said. The room just emptied out. I mean, couldn't even get started. And I was going to give kudos to the airport, just my 2 cents. In the 5 years that I've been with you, 5+ years I've been with the organization, I must say that the relationship with the airport has never been better. We have a biweekly sales meeting, and once a month, Trish and Hassan will join us for that meeting and provide updates for our entire staff. They've been very great partners from the standpoint of engaging on tourism side with Mr. Jimenez, and it's just such a breath of fresh air that they actually want to hear from us. They want to hear our needs and wants as it relates to the group segment and the tourism segment, and kudos to Darren and his team, so thank you. Okay, jumping right in, I want to start off by kind of giving everybody an update. At the request of our chair, and as Mr. Harris indicated earlier, all of the department heads within the Rscva will be presenting their annual goals as it relates to the three-year strategic plan. And within their presentations, we'll go over 2 or 3 of the initiatives that we obviously need to achieve in order to reach those goals. So this year's goal for the sales department's meeting and convention team is to align and adapt to key stakeholders' sales strategies and priorities so that the organization is targeting priority customers through group sales. To achieve this goal, we've identified 3 key initiatives and the information needed to align with our hotels. The first initiative is to complete an assessment of all major stakeholders' ideal group requirements. We identified 3 points of discussion with our stakeholders. The first topic is room nights. As we emerge from the COVID pandemic, we anticipate that our stakeholders' hotel mix, segmentation, and overall room strategy has changed. We need to understand what each of our hotel properties' group room night goals are, not only on an annual basis, but for the next 5 years. We're booking for the future, not for today. Have these group numbers changed from previous years or been modified by what was learned during the global pandemic? We need to know our partners' monthly group room night goals, as we assume that these numbers vary significantly by hotel, by month. What are the group room night ceilings Sunday through Thursday versus weekends? We recognize that property responses are impacted by several factors, but we must understand what the overall general strategy is for each hotel. The next point is to determine our hotel partners' property preferences. What are the preferred arrival and departure patterns? Will properties increase the room commitments if a group arrives on a Tuesday or Wednesday, departing on a Friday, versus a Friday departing on a Monday? Do guaranteed food and beverage minimums impact a hotel's decision on bidding on a group or the number of rooms they'll commit to? Are the hotels consistent in how they respond to group inquiries? Is there a trend in the group segment from our hotel partners? The third point is to understand mix strategy and position as it relates to sports groups, youth groups, and attendee demographics. Which hotel partners will contract sports groups? For properties that will bid on this segment, what factors impact these decisions? Are hotels with gaming less likely to bid on sports or youth groups? Are these decisions impacted if these groups meet in the shoulder season or off season and consume their stay Sunday through Thursday? Will the select service properties bid on youth groups where gaming is not a priority? Does a group's attendees' demographics impact the hotel's decision to bid on a program? Do the group's attendees' propensity to gamble or dine in their premium restaurants impact room blocks, room rates, or concessions offered in their hotel contracts? The second key initiative that we've identified to achieve our annual goal is to implement an annual hotel engagement program. Communication, sharing information, and collaboration is key to our success as a destination. This fiscal year, there are several opportunities for our hotel partners to engage with the Rscva sales team. We collaborate with our hotel partners on our messaging, media channels, and who we advertise with. Once the plan is complete and the ad buys are placed, we share this with our hotel partners, which allows them to possibly augment their print, digital, and banner advertising with their media buys. June through August, the Rscva participated in 3 significant industry shows: MPI WEC, Connect Marketplace Annual, and ASAE in Nashville. We strongly encourage our hotel partners to join the Rscva at these annual shows and participate in our client events. At ASAE in Nashville, we hosted a client event at Ariat, a well-known high-end Western brand store. We hosted over 70 meeting planners. Ariat provided the ideal opportunity to mingle with clients in a social environment. Next month, we'll attend IMEX in Las Vegas and host a client event with over 50 association meeting planners. In January, we'll be at Convening Leaders in Columbus. And throughout the entire year, whether it be an annual trade show or a quarterly regional show, we invite our hotel partners to join the Rscva. The team also hosts up to 2 in-market client events per year in each of our sales team territories. 7 remote offices, 7 territories, and 2 of the examples that I'm showing today is recently our regional director of convention sales in Dallas, Roma Giordano, hosted a bouquet and sip event with clients and hotel partners. And regional director of convention sales in our Atlanta office, Sean Tracy, hosted 45 clients and 3 hotel partners at a Lady Gaga concert. Absolutely. Well, wait, there's more. Future in-market events include a Lizzo performance in Washington, D.C., the San Diego Padres versus Los Angeles Dodgers baseball game in San Diego, and an NFL football game featuring the Kansas City Chiefs against the Tennessee Titans in Kansas City, Missouri. We realize that attending out-of-town trade shows and in-market events is not always an option for our partners. Therefore, we try to meet with our hotel leaders and their teams here in Reno or Tahoe on a monthly basis. We request our partners to participate in our quarterly director sales meetings. This meeting provides updates on production, travel schedules, upcoming events, and discussions on all issues related to sales. The sales team is confident that we will achieve our annual goal by completing these initiatives outlined today. Aligning and adapting to our stakeholders' sales strategies and engaging with our partners through trade shows, events, and in-person meetings provides a roadmap to success. That concludes my presentation today. Happy to field any questions from the board. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rscva. I appreciate, I think it's really important with each department or each initiative, we're looking at this annual plan, and this starts as a great start, really shows us where we're going. And a lot of us that are not, I'm not a salesperson, so gives me a little more in-depth of what you're doing and how you're aligning with our direction through the strategic plan. So thank you very much for your work. Ms. Keel?
Oh, sorry.
We have to share over here. So, thank you. So, great update. Thank you, Mike. Wanted to say particularly, I'm very happy to hear, and I'm not saying this hasn't always been the case, but that you're pointing out the collaboration of trying to understand the needs of the different properties, because all the properties do have all different needs, right? And I hate it when the GSR has to turn down a prospect and not participate. And so understanding the needs of all the properties and meeting with us directly is very, very appreciated. So thank you. The annual plan. Can we get this digitally? The last one I have has a draft on it, and I don't know if I missed the final, but.
Absolutely. We can have Lisa send it out, but we make it available on the website that people can download and get access, but we'll certainly send it to you digitally.
Thank you. I love the scorecard, although I already told you guys that before, so thank you so much for the scorecard. I'm just, visually, I'm more of a numbers data person as opposed to all the fancy pictures and stuff. So I was looking back at my old notes when we developed the strategic plan, and we have all of the goals and then how they're going to be measured, which I thought was great. And that's all outlined in here. Is there do we have a 1-page or a 2-pager that just says goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? And then so when you talk about every meeting about how we're going to reference back to the strategic plan or the annual plan, I'm not going to be like Stephen and put it to my chest when I come in. But is there a way that we can reference back like a 1-pager and as opposed to having to look through the book and all that? Just an idea.
Absolutely. We will augment that moving forward for the presentations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rscva.
Thank you, Mr. No, just to build on Ms. Keel's point, I so appreciate, Mike, I think the shareholder assessment, and again, there's many of you in here that aren't directly involved with the bookings of an actual group, but it's complicated, right? You're coordinating a lot of different variables from every individual property strategy, which is continually that's being tweaked as we go along. And you said something key. I think we're not looking at just 2022. So when you're talking about pricing, availability, strategy, what we're trying to yield out of that customer. So what customer may have worked 5 years ago for the market is a customer that we may be looking at now saying, how do we shift that to a midweek, or is it even doable? But I think those are all great points, and I really, similar to your point with the airport, it's never been better. I think you're reaching out and working with the properties like this is critical. And I think it's, booking these groups is challenging. You've got you've got variables that are really out of your control too. I mean, you've got lift and, corporate budgets, and obviously pandemics come once every, 100 years, but there's just a lot of variables, but thank you for that. And I think kind of getting a better feel of what each property is looking at really is going to help. Also the efficiencies of this organization, but the efficiencies of the individual's properties, that you spend a lot of resources on doing these FAMs and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rscva and Ms. Kill. Just a few comments to your comments. Yes, I mean, it seems simplistic for those of us that are hoteliers or have worn a hotel hat, that when you talk about the booking window, and we realize as a team at the Rscva that when ownership looks at business that is consuming today, they're asking questions as to why the rate is what it is, why the concessions are what they are, why the commissions are, sometimes not forgetting that that business may have been booked 4 or 5 years ago. And as we look at business today, obviously our market is performing extremely well. Room tax is up, segmentation has changed, our market did extremely well versus our competitors, but we obviously trying to reiterate to our partnership within the sales leaders in the community that today we're performing very well, but no one can predict the future. So what's going to happen in 25 and 26 and 27? If it works out and we're doing what we're today, amazing. But again, no one has that crystal ball. So we always encourage build a foundation, yield from that, get that group customer in-house. Obviously, we're going to focus on shoulder and soft seasons and midweek. But I just want to share this with the group as well. We recently, in our last Director of Sales, Director of Tourism meeting, we had a presentation by Cvent. And Cvent is, for those of you that aren't in the hotel space, it is the largest by far lead generator platform in the country. It will generate, depending on market, but anywhere from 70 to 80% of the group leads that come through to a CVB, DMO, or a hotel. And in looking at the data for our market, from the months of March through August, our lead volume and everything we do, just comparing to 2019 pre-pandemic, has been up every single month compared to 2019. So from a standpoint of the destination becoming relative and the MNC and sports segment, we're there. We're seeing the demand, we're seeing the inquiries, we're seeing the leads. Now it's just a matter of finding the right group, fit the right piece of the puzzle, and getting our hotels to respond to those leads and booking the business.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Were there any other comments so that then we can get moving? Thank you. Mr. Murdoch.
Couple things, Mike. I just, if you could, we've got satellite offices. How important are those offices? And it seems like they really are out there shouting Reno, Tahoe. I mean.
Yeah, so I think I've spoken about this before, but to your question, Mr. Murdoch, so we currently have 7 offices, Los Angeles, Sacramento, Dallas, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Atlanta. And we're a bit of a unique market from the standpoint that we obviously don't have a lot of flags in our community in Washoe County. And so therefore, we don't have what they call NSOs, or national sales offices. A few of our properties do have representation, what we call in-market or within cities like Chicago or Washington, D.C. But for the most part, our team and our 7 regional directors of convention sales are truly an extension of our hotel sales departments. We are out there representing our hotels as a national sales office on their behalf, because we don't have the brands from a large property perspective of Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott, et cetera. And I think it's important to point out that what a lot of people don't realize in terms of the relevance of this organization and our team as it relates to the meetings and convention and sports segment is that we represent on a consistent basis north of 50% of the room nights that are consumed in this market per year that we have sourced out of this office. That is extremely unique. Most markets are 15, 20, maybe 25%. So the reliance on our team and our organization to bring meetings and conventions and sports groups to this region is critical.
Great. Next question is, when you just heard Darren mention leisure, how important now does leisure become compared to conventions? Because Darren just mentioned it, and the leisure's up. Are we prepared with under your guide to go after that leisure customer? Because as you know, in our world, gaming, we all love leisure customers.
Right.
'Cause-
You know, when I'm sitting in meetings all day, we understand. Mr. Jimenez and the tourism team obviously does a fabulous job of working with all the third-party distributors. You know, when we talk about the Pricelines and Expedias of the world, you know, he just presented, he'll be presenting to this board at a future board meeting, but he'll go through the co-op programs, and we work diligently with all of our partners and basically using our resources and the hotel's resources to ensure that our branding is out there through the third parties and really focusing again on the shoulder and soft season. That's when we need help, and that's what we're focused on.
My last one real quick. How important is it to have, you know, if you're going after the sports segment, there's the facilities, right? I mean, you're doing more, whatever you call it, volleyball or more, all this stuff that's important that as a destination, we're not San Diego, we're not Seattle, we're Reno, Tahoe, so we have to work real hard.
Yeah,
That segment's in here.
correct. So to that point, Mr. Murdoch, it's critical, right? Our facilities have to be in a position to be able to host those events, and a lot of that requires assets that we don't necessarily have or own. So we're looking into that. We are pursuing opportunities in terms of what assets we need that will cater to specific segments. Again, not to put the cart in front of the horse, but we're focusing on opportunity that could bring a significant amount of business during the November to March periods. We've put out a feasibility study relative to this opportunity, and we'll be sharing that with the board at a future meeting.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Just one quick, Mike, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your team as well, because I know it's a lot of hard work. As you and I have spoke, I would, we could count the group conference properties up in the Washoe Tahoe portion on one finger right now. We hope that changes here with the development of the EKN group and the old Biltmore site. But I would encourage you to continue to work with that team up there at the Hyatt and understand the same kind of information that you're gleaning out of the Reno properties. It's a little different match, I get it, but just making sure we understand what that property looks like and their needs are. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely, appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fraza, real quick.
Yeah, that was my same question, and I did talk to our CEO about it earlier this week. Our out-of-state sales team, it'd be great maybe to have them on Zoom for a meeting, just to know, for example, like our San Diego crew, we used to have Comic-Con here. What happened to it? Can we bring it back or an offshoot of that? Some of those different events on the leisure side, so following up on that, and also that sports tourism and our facilities. I'm looking forward to that report coming back to the board, because if there's things we need to buy or even bond for in getting that sports destination here on those off-season months, I think is going to be really critical. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rscva. I'm sorry. You were going to respond.
No, I was just going to say, thank you, Ms. Fraza, for the comment. I think it's a great idea in terms of having the team either participate. We're looking at trying to get the entire team into the market for I'll call it a retreat, I guess, around January. So maybe we can piggyback that on the dates of the January board meeting and have them participate in the meeting, I think would be great.
That'd be great. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on. We still do not have a either phone or Zoom connection with the mayor. And because of that, the next two items, I'm sure that she wants to give input on our next two items on the CEO review. So I'm going to ask that we go out of order here and come back to that, because we are still working on that connection. So I'd like to move to item G4, and probably, if we still don't have it, go up to G3 and then go back to the CEO review. So hopefully we'll have a connection with the mayor at that time, but I'd like to move to G4. Do I need a motion for that?
Can we just
okay?
Can we just make a motion, Madam Chair?
He said we don't need a motion.
Oh.
I know we approved the
Can we make
agenda.
a motion on G4? Do we need a staff report, is what I'm saying?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Move to approve?
Second.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on G4 that actually could have been a consent agenda item? We might have a connection. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion on item G4? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That moved that item really quick. And in the
I
future.
know you want to make the meetings a little
I will
shorter,
I will
so-
look at that as a possible consent agenda item. Those are the type of things that we can put on consent for sure. Thank you, Ms. Rosa. So we're going to go ahead and go backwards to item G3. We're asking the board to review, discuss, and possibly take action to approve a request by Travel North Tahoe, formerly Incline Village Crystal Bay Visitors Bureau, to provide matching funds for the fiscal year 2022-2023 TART Connect Incline Village Crystal Bay Zone 3 Micro Shuttle Project in an amount not to exceed $350,000. And this is being presented by our board member, Mr. Chapman. Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Madam Chair, is it feasible to just conference call, I mean?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, I was gonna say, okay.
Just call, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah.
Do I control the moving forward?
Was there?
Hello?
I can just roll.
Yeah, or just space bar.
Space bar, move it. Okay, excellent. Okay, great. Is this on? Okay. All right, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Just for the record, Andy Chapman, President CEO of Travel North Tahoe, Nevada. And I just wanted to recognize Commissioner Hill, who's in the audience today. She's been a part of this conversation on transit. She's also the current chair of the Tahoe Transportation District. And Jamie Wright, who is Placer County TART Transit Public Works Manager, if I said that correctly enough, and has been very involved in transit in the region. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about this. I had brought it up in the past, and having the time today is appreciated. That is not moving forward. There it goes. I just wanted to quickly talk about the missions and visions of our organization as we just currently change that, because it does dive into why I'm up here and why we have been doing some of these things regarding destination management. Our mission statement is to encourage destination experiences that support a vibrant economy, enhance community character, and foster environmental stewardship. With that, the mission is preserve and enhance a vibrant and innovative destination by leading in stewardship and sustainability. And it's really that stewardship and sustainability efforts that we spend a lot of time on, and why I'm here today. Not going to go to these core values much, but it's really about leading, preserving, supporting, creating, adopting, and promoting. So why are we here today, and what is TART Connect? So TART Connect is branded as a service of TART, which is operated by Placer County. And for those that don't understand the transit environment up in Tahoe, the Washoe RTC, who is really the authority of transit within Washoe County, partners through Placer County to provide the services on the Nevada side of North Lake Tahoe. They do that through a contract arrangement with Placer County and that RTC board. And I understand that Commissioner Hill is also on that RTC board too, so thank you for that. Oh, not yet, but maybe someday soon. So that's great. So the service is provided by Downtowner, and it's a group that came into Tahoe a couple of years ago and provided the service initially at what was Rscva and now Palisades Tahoe in what was called the Mountaineer. They have then since expanded to the 5 zones now on the North Shore, and actually they just started service down in South Lake Tahoe through an agreement that they're having with their new event center. So Downtowner, they're out of Florida, a great vendor that we've been using. TART Connect is an app-based, on-demand, free to the user, where you basically plug in where you want to be picked up and where you want to be dropped off, and you should have that done within 15 minutes. What we have seen some incredible numbers that I'm going to get to here in a minute. It is point-to-point in connection into our regional TART system, and the days of operation, and this has been a 2-year pilot program, so we're in the middle of our second pilot program year. But the days of operation for the summer started June 24th of last year and ran through September 6th. The fall season then picked up to December 9th. The winter season, December 10th through April 10th, and then the spring season followed up that. Hours of operation, it's 8 a.m. to midnight on our peak season, summer and winter, so it's 16 hours of service. And then 6 p.m. to midnight for us on the Nevada side. I believe it's still 6 to 10 on the California side, but we felt it important to connect particularly into that Crystal Bay zone for the entertainment component. And we use 3 to 4 vehicles, kind of depending on what that need base is. This is the zone that the TART Connect, Zone 3, that's what I'm here discussing with you today. And then why TART Connect? So this is an important one too, particularly these last 2 years. Tahoe has been just inundated with travel. We were caught with our proverbial pants down that first summer of 2020 just because the region was not ready for the demand that hit us. We have since then implemented a lot of programs and plans that have helped with these issues. You see on the bigger picture there that gentleman that decided to park down the embankment, which is an interesting place to park. So as he was being pulled out by a tow truck, somebody else was ready to come back in that same spot that he occupied there. And then also we have the demands that are felt by the residential populations. So this tourists go away. We've had these Friday unwelcoming parties and Sunday good riddance parties. Not so much this year, but last year got picked up in all the national news. And obviously just the demand on the facilities and the infrastructure. And then also YTART Connect, what you see there is a map for the TRPA's 2045 Regional Transportation Vision. So this effort is part of that regional transportation vision. There's also discussions about a mobility hub up in the incline portion that you'll be probably hearing some news about. But again, incline doesn't operate in a vacuum. It operates within the whole ecosystem of the transportation program. So just looking at some one-year stats, so this is just for the first year of the pilot program. Again, it did start on June of 2021. The Travel North Tahoe, Nevada, again, formerly Incline Village Crystal Bay Visitor Bureau, our board came to the table because we knew that the Placer County side was also moving forward with this TART Connect, but they could not fund operations within the Nevada side. So we had to figure out how to get that done. Our board stepped up with $400,000 worth of funding in that first year with some other partners, RTC, certainly Washoe County, and thanks Commissioner Hill for the commissioner donation for the spring last year. Tahoe Fund, League to Save Lake Tahoe, and the Hyatt Lake Tahoe all participated in that first year program. The total ridership, and I just looked at the numbers this morning. If you look at all of it from up to yesterday, we just went over 300,000 rides system-wide on those 3 zones. And again, Zone 3 being the incline portion. Zone 2 is kind of the Crystal Bay to Tahoe City, and then Zone 1 is Tahoe City, kind of down the West Shore. So over 300,000 riderships was if you work in the transportation business and you have a first-year program. That's phenomenal success. Within Zone 3, we carry about 40% of that total ridership. And I've got some slides that will kind of talk about that here in a second as well. So again, this was just through June. So you see the incline component is really leading the charge of utilization within this program. And then really this is one that I know the transportation folks really look at is what is the average passenger per hour? And so incline is at just over 8 passengers per hour, which is very high. And if you look at that as a comparison, not only to RTC, but to other locations within Placer County and other locations, the incline Zone 3 has led the charge in efficiency and utilization. And just some heat maps kind of showing the pickup and drop-offs. Obviously, incline, it's about a 4 square mile area. So you get a lot of usage of kind of that core area and incline, picking up over to Crystal Bay, utilizing the trailhead drop-off and things like that. So year 1 funding, again, this just kind of touches on the first year was $782,000. The funding was, as I mentioned, about $400,000 by our bureau and then our partners that were involved in that. So where we are now today, so we are at the end of the 2-year program. Our board has come to the determination that we can't be the one always funding it, because if we're always the one funding it, no one else will need to step up on that. There are opportunities as we go into year 2, which I know Jamie, I'll maybe ask her to explain some of this as well, but we can't use we're not using any federal funds to operate because of the process that those federal funds take. And I'm out of my realm in these, but it has to do with the bidding process and the transportation and driver awareness and things like that. So after this next year, we're going to have the opportunity to look at the 2-year funding program, or pilot program, look at how we could improve it, look at how we could change it to access federal funds moving forward. But we still have this gap, which is why I'm here to talk to you today. So right now, the summer and fall programs are fully funded through RTC. And again, thank you, Commissioner Hill and Commissioner Lucy for, in the Washoe County Board of Supervisors budget of this year, they included $100,000 for this program, which is vitally important. The Tahoe Fund came up with $50,000. Our organization is on for $50,000. We're still fundraising for $29,000, and that brings me to the request to this group for $350,000 for this year. So why is this important? You know, responsible travel and travel messaging, as we know, is vitally important for Tahoe. It isn't a more game for us any longer. It is how do we mitigate the impacts that are already coming in, and then how do we strategically create the demand and the demand periods that we need. Everything that we're doing on North Shore is going to fall into one of these categories of how do we judge what we're doing moving forward. And then why should the Rscva care? Why should you guys care? Well, because I know you all care about Lake Tahoe. That's for sure. And destination management, if you look at your plan there, is one of our main goals here is the destination management of the product, and this is part of building that product. And there is a responsibility by this organization to manage those generated visitor-induced impacts. A lot of, it's half of our name is the Tahoe portion of that. So obviously we do know that visitors are coming up that are driven from this destination, and we have to figure out how do we manage those things. And really investing in the Lake Tahoe tourism infrastructure is important. We do have to invest in the grill and not just sell the sizzle on the steak. And I know that's, Tahoe is part of this destination, it always will be, but there is a request that we have to invest in that grill. And the current Rscva budget does have about $2.1 million of TOT revenues that are generated in the Incline and Crystal Bay area that are within our fiscal year 22-23 budget. So there are revenues coming from our area. And again, it's what Tahoe needs, and you do care about it. I was hoping for just a quick minute if Commissioner Hill might be able to say a few words, and then Jamie, I'll ask if I missed anything from a standpoint, or certainly can help me answer any questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Great.
Commissioner Hill, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you so much for the consideration of this proposal. Microtransit is one of many pieces that we are working towards to have a comprehensive, better destination management plan for Tahoe. Washoe County has been investing in a transportation study. We will be doing a transportation summit in November, which we will be discussing a 5-year CIP plan to improve neighborhoods in Incline Village, public safety in Incline Village, parking in Incline Village and Crystal Bay, as well as working with NDOT on how do we improve State Route 28 and make sure it's slower and safer and just a better experience. When you go into Kings Beach, for example, it is beautiful. We need to have that same thing on the North Shore, and Washoe County, we are committed to looking at those kind of investments. So microtransit is one of the pieces. I was able to fund this last fiscal year $100,000 for microtransit, and I think I know Washoe County will be stepping up even more in the future for these type of efforts, because it's expected of us with our 777 plan, which the federal government, the states of California and Nevada, and all of the counties are going to be putting in $7 million apiece for the next 20 years to really have better transportation management and ensure that we have frequent buses, free buses, as well as capital projects connecting a bike trail all the way from Crystal Bay into Incline Village. That has been on the map or in the plans for years. We need to fund that. Additionally, finishing that connection on 28, the East Shore Trail to Spooner. So we have a lot of vision and we have a lot of commitment into how we can make this a better experience for both the visitors and the locals. And I really appreciate your consideration of this and looking forward to partnering with Rscva. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Was there anything that Mr. Chapman
I was just going to
missed?
ask Jamie if she could come up and talk a little bit about the 2-year pilot program and then kind of where we go moving forward, because that is a question about are we going to be back every year asking for funds and such, and that's an important point. So.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Good morning, everyone. So we are in the midst of our second year of the 2-year pilot program. We are currently going out for an RFP. We will be doing that in partnership actually with not only Washoe RTC, but the town of Truckee, who also launched a zone this past summer and is looking at implementing microtransit within their region as well. It is very much a collaborative effort with 3 different jurisdictions kind of under this one single umbrella. I do want to thank Andy and his team. He really cultivated, I think, the interest and initial funding for this zone within Washoe County. I will tell you it has been a game changer within Incline Village and Crystal Bay. This summer, when we compare season over season, Washoe County zone has seen a 43% increase summer over summer, and the fixed route continues to see increase. So we see a lot of cross-pollination between fixed route and the microtransit. We know we're moving a lot of employees and visitors alike. So throughout this next year, we will be going out for an RFP, which would allow us to use federal dollars for the program. But we also know that local dollars are still needed. In Placer County, we depend on local support to operate this in addition to fixed route. Given that we are in a rural area, our population matters tremendously. So we're in a very different boat than the urban areas, and we really actually do depend on self-help and local support. So our local TOT actually contributes $2 million a year to this program. And we are looking internally at how we continue to maintain that as well. And as I've discussed with Andy, although there might be a shift in federal dollars, I still think there will be a need for local help and local support with this program, and especially to expand transit to really deal with the compounded issues we deal with on any given weekend when we have a couple extra thousand people in our region. So it's a challenge. I think we have a great partnership and a wonderful collaboration with multiple partners around the table. It's been really wonderful to see Washoe RTC as well as Washoe County get involved up at the basin. And so we are looking forward to continued partnership with the program.
Thank you so much. Andy, I have a quick question. Well, I guess 2 quick questions. So is the $350 that you're asking for a one-time ask? And then on your ridership, is it predominantly tourists? Is it locals? Can you kind of give us a breakdown of that?
Sure. So on the ridership, it's about depending on how you consider a second homeowner and how they interact with the destination, but it's about probably a 75% residential use. So it is high residential use, and that's one of our objectives is how do we drive more visitor use on that. But at least in and that's system-wide. That's not just the incline zone, because obviously we're getting data from the whole area. At this point, this is a one-time ask for this year. I think, as mentioned, both Commissioner Hill and Jamie Wright mentioned, part of this effort in Tahoe, and not to get too much into the weeds, there's a $20 million annual unmet need to implement the TRPA's transportation plan. And that's annual, $20 million annually. Commissioner Hill mentioned this 7-7-7 split that you might hear of. So how do we generate that $20 million of these plans that are out there but aren't funded. And this is that's in that 20 million. So once that component is figured out, 7 million from the federal side, 7 million from the 2 states, and 7 million from locally, this program will fall under that funding mechanism. Is that going to happen next year? I don't think so, but we're making steps towards that. So I think, and plus we are continuing to look at what those other options may be on the federal side and how that shifts.
Okay, thank you. And so just to follow up on your residential use for the system, I think that still meets a need. Obviously, we would like more tourists using it as well, but it takes a car off the road.
It does.
And it also gets people a ride to work or to their errands that are local. And if you don't have that availability, it affects we're all looking for workforce. And if people can't afford or can't get to work, this helps make it easier. And so I would think that benefits people not having to have a car at all, maybe, or that they can save, especially on gas. And so it would benefit the work side, and none of these properties could operate if you didn't have the employees that were there working in the different properties and businesses up at the lake. So is that pretty much what you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that we kind of see on that, when you look at the hours of ridership, you certainly see that the highest ridership we have in Incline are on the evening hours. And so we're extrapolating some of the data from that, but those are going to be the visitor use of that. So if I'm staying at, say, the Hyatt and I want to go and see a great show at Crystal Bay, what a better way to do it than to grab that. And then the morning side are the people maybe going to work, getting to school, going to the tennis center, whatever it might be. But yeah, it's a component of that destination investment and investing in the infrastructure of the destination to make it more efficient for both visitors and residents alike.
Okay. Do I have any questions? Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you. Andy, couple things. Don't you have UNR have a campus up there too?
UNR does. They just started the campus on July 1st.
How many students and how impacted is that going to be on your roads?
I don't believe the student population is going to change all that much because the infrastructure itself isn't changing. They're not building new dorms or new classrooms or anything like that. So I don't believe the numbers are going to change. And again, when you look at when summer, for example, the campus is closed in the summertime, and that's when we have the highest use of the not only the roads but the visitation.
Right. On the donations, the county gave $100,000, right? I mean, I'm just trying to understand. Who else? Do you have a list of?
Yeah. So right now, so Washoe RTC did come to the table with an additional $290,000. The Washoe County Board of Supervisors committed $100,000. The Tahoe Fund $50,000. We're committing another $50,000. We still have to raise $29,000, which I know we will, and then this request in front of you for a total of $869,000 for the year.
Okay, Ms. Fraz.
Yeah, I guess just a couple questions, and I guess the first one being for Charles. Still being relatively new to the board, because we do get what was it, over $2 million from the Tahoe Basin. What do we pump back out the Rscva in that district? Is there a carve out where we give them a dollar amount, or how does that work? Or is it just go to the general fund like everything else? Yeah, it's the general fund. Okay. And then I guess the second question, I guess the federal, the board, we've done things where we're like, hey, we just did it with the city of Reno on the bowling part where we say, hey, we'll put in this much, you guys got to put in this much with the $2 surcharge. I'm totally in support of this, and I think Commissioner Hill, you've done an amazing job with this sustainability. This is a big thing for tourism too. I'm just concerned with the $350, and maybe I'm a minority on this, but I see the county's doing $100,000. I'm hearing 75%. Our mission is tourism, and 75% is residential. I'm just having challenges with the $350 because we would be the highest sponsor of this when RTC, it seems like more of a transportation. So I'm totally in favor of funding this. I just don't know what the right number is. So I don't know, Charles, if you've looked at this and analyzed this request, Personally, I think these requests in the future should go to the Finance Committee for vetting. And I'm comfortable moving forward with something today and maybe having it go to the Finance Committee for more vetting. But I want to know how it directly relates to tourism and how we get it there. So I'd like to hear from our CEO, since this is on our agenda, if this has been analyzed for that component of what we're legally supposed to fund with room tax dollars. Are we in that realm?
And you want me to go first, Andy? Do you want to respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I concur with what you're saying, Jessica. I think we need to be a good community partner and participate. My question is just at what level, right? I think that Andy and I spent some time together. He hasn't asked for money before. This is a first-time ask that's being done. The real question is, should we be the lead sponsor in this? I leave that to the board to decide. That being said, our goal is, there's a couple goals. We want to make sure that we support the lake when it comes to messaging around sustainability and everything that needs to happen. No question about that. At the end of the day, our job is to drive well-qualified visitors, whether it's leisure or the meetings and convention side. And so really the question is, at what level do we participate? I'm in favor of us participating. I leave it to this board to debate at what level that you all feel comfortable with that. In terms of the Finance Committee, I'm always in favor of making sure that we vet it as much as possible. We did not do that in this case. It came straight to the board, but that's something for consideration moving forward.
And if I can, so I believe we have to look at it as a 2-year program. So you're not the majority. So it's $1.6 million have been put into this program. And you can see that, we put about $400,000 in of our own TOT funds through our own agency, and we're a $1.8 million organization. So that was a huge investment by our organization. And then obviously the other partners. So at $1.6 million, you're certainly not the lead on that, but you're part of that. I'm going to go back, and I've said this before, the Rscva efforts, and rightly so, have used Tahoe in the name, in really everything. If you look at the website, 40% of the hero images on the website homepage are Tahoe, and we certainly have worked very closely with Charles and the staff, and I know Christine is very interested in making sure that what is happening from these efforts are copacetic and working closely with ours. When we were asking them, hey, last year we just need to shut all this down, they did this. So we work very closely together. But we have to invest in the infrastructure. We can't just keep saying Tahoe, 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 go to Tahoe, bring your groups up to Tahoe, have a nice dinner at the Lone Eagle Grill, and then go back to Reno. So as Charles said, I don't believe the lake has ever come in front of this board to ask for funding requests specifically. I know we've got a special event funding through that normal process for Shakespeare, for different things like that. But I believe this is the first time we've come and asked for something very specifically, and this is what Tahoe needs now. We don't need more marketing or more promotions. We need to fix our infrastructure so that the experience stays what we all want it to be, so that it's there for the future and for our benefit moving forward.
One of the things, I just want a point of information. I asked Christine in the marketing department to evaluate what our spend has been up at the lake, specifically around changing what paid advertising goes into the lake, knowing that there were sensitivities. And two things. One, we've cut back to about, I think Christina said 15% of what we're doing across all digital channels when it comes to the lake. And two, it's all around sustainability. That to me is what's really important. We still market. I mean, we still try to create stories, and there's some visitation, but from a spending standpoint, we wanted to make sure that we were responsible, and we've pulled back on what that spend has been in order to support the overall goals of that lake.
And can I just ask a clarification real fast? So would this be 175 out of this fiscal year and then another 175? Because that'd make a difference. You said it was a 2-year program.
We're on the we're halfway through the 2nd year program right now. So we have the funding in place that operates the summer and the fall 2022-23 fiscal year. What we are still short on are the operational costs for the winter, this coming winter, and spring. And so this $350,000 is what we need to have the operation go through June 30, 2023, this fiscal year.
Okay.
sorry. Ms. Silver?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chapman, you mentioned a few moments ago something about not utilizing federal funding. And my question is to you and possibly Commissioner Hill and Commissioner Lucy as to why ARPA funds are not available for this particular project, since there's been so much emphasis put on utilization of one-time money, hundreds of millions of dollars, particularly for infrastructure. Why that's not being applied here?
Sure, and they may be able to answer this question. The way I understand it is that those funds are primarily infrastructure related, and this is operations. So this is an operational use, and again, I know my transportation friends will understand that or can explain that maybe better.
So ARPA funds were never qualified for operations. Transportation specifically meant for actually building roads and infrastructure of that nature.
Buying buses.
And then in addition, we did apply for grants for Operation Stand For through DOT. Those grants were denied for Washoe County, and they were only given to Lyon County and Douglas County this year. And so that is the reason why there would be no federal funding. We tried a multitude of different avenues to collect funding for the Tahoe project, and to no benefit.
And the other item on that
Thank
I
you.
understand is because we didn't go through some of that RFP process, and the drivers aren't, the qualification, there's just some difference there when you're using federal funds. That is the plan next year, is to, go through those processes that allow the use of federal funds. It may not fund the whole thing, but to allow federal funds to be used.
And just a second quick question.
Go ahead.
If I understand, you've mentioned infrastructure, but I think you're referring to operational. So this is funding to better operate or increase the operation of transit that you hope more residents and tourists utilize.
Correct.
As they access, whether it's their daily errands or a trip to the doctor, or it's going to a concert from one hotel to another.
Correct. And when I use the word kind of investing in the infrastructure, I'm talking about the investing in the destination, experience and the destination management, which for Rscva is our goal, strategic goal number 2. Which is interesting when you look at the specifics of that goal. There's not a lot of mention about that investment in the Tahoe side, which I think this gives this board an opportunity to show that that is important. And I know most recently, and I know Charles and the team joined our Stewardship Tahoe core team as of yesterday. They were on our meeting, and that's a region-wide group. All of the 5 counties, the states, the jurisdictions, the Forest Service, state parks, everybody going through a process right now where we've hired a consultant to help us come up with that stewardship plan for Tahoe and how we implement that. And I'm very pleased and happy to see that the Rscva is at that table. This is a way to codify those efforts.
I do have a question for Mr. Harris. As we look at this, this wasn't budgeted, so it's not in our current budget. Would we be looking at possible augmentation, or if we were to approve either this amount or another amount, where would that come from, or are we in a good fiscal position to do so?
Thank you for the question. And Andy and I have talked about that as I did with any and all board members that I met pre-board. There is no line item for that right now in the current budget. This would have to go to an augmentation. When I talked to Mr. Chapman, he said he was okay for the initial part of this. And so we have a finance subcommittee meeting scheduled to go over potential augmentation in November. And I would advise that the board make that a priority number 1 if there is an augmentation at whatever level you decide to fund, to make that as part of that meeting in November.
And if I add the one element on that the commitment today is critical, because that's what allows our operators to plan for winter season, which is snowed yesterday or 2 days ago. It's right around the corner. So whether those funds come at the beginning of December, that's absolutely fine. It's, we're looking for that commitment.
And the other thing I said is if we don't have that augmentation, we would be pulling that money out of the marketing spend as planned in the current year. So without that line item specifically, depending upon at what level you fund, we would probably have to reduce the marketing spend until we could have an augmentation to make it whole.
Right, and I would.
if there's no additional funds.
Right, and I would remind that the 2.1 million of TOT revenue that comes out of Incline Crystal Bay to the general fund, and if 10 to 15% of that is currently being used on the consumer media purchase side, there's a little bit of an imbalance there. So wherever those funds come from and however we could work that out.
Okay, so Mr. Harris, also we could consider, because it looks like Andy's asking us to make some kind of commitment today, if the board agrees with that, and I've got a couple more questions I know, but it could be an up to. So it could be up to, say, the 350,000 with any number in between, and maybe the augmentation determines what that, I know you kind of need to have that commitment to know that you can move forward. If we were to commit to a lower amount, and then when augmentation happens, review it again through the Finance Committee, is that something that would help you today, and that
certainly
would be
I think
acceptable?
with that up to conversation, and again, I think looking at the August numbers that I know are coming out and the July numbers that we've seen, I think talking to Mr. Harris that we do believe there will be, a decent augmentation discussion that the Finance Committee will be having after
Okay,
Q1.
thank you. Mr. Rscva, and then I'm going to, do you want to go? I'll let Mr. Kennedy go first.
So just to speak on the budgeting, so I think if we were to approve an amount today, it sounds like we don't have the line item in the budget, and so it would come out of marketing. And so then at a future augmentation, so we would commit to that funding today that would be funded out of the marketing budget. In the future, if there's an augmentation, then I think the augmentation could be used to backfill the funds in the marketing budget, but I don't think we can't approve it today based on the idea that at a future augmentation, we'll have the money to fund that way. So we're gonna have to fund it today if we approve it, and then we can deal with future augmentations for how that gets backfilled.
Mr. Rscva.
Just one thing on that clarification, though, is I understand we don't have it budgeted, and you're saying we take it out of marketing. I mean, it could come out of somewhere else, though, too.
Yes.
I mean, we'd take 75, we take half out of marketing, half out of facilities, and say, figure it out, and we'll get to it. But, I don't think there's any question there's support. I think across the board, I get it. I know when we've chatted, Andy, just on the challenges of the lake, I think this is a very small Band-Aid that really gets to a much bigger, complex federal region. I mean, I think down the road, and it may not be in my lifetime, but I think there's going to have to be a program put in place for the Lake Tahoe Basin that works hand in hand with the bed base in the valley and gives a quality experience at the lake. We've all seen it as locals living here of the last few years. It's tough. And I do wrestle with this number. And I think, again, I appreciate the clarification, because when I saw 350, I thought, I don't know why. I'm all for supporting, but I don't know if we should be taking a lead amount. I don't know how we get off the ground on finding that right value. The one question I was going to ask is, are there any the one partner that I'm kind of wondering, and again, it's always easy to spend other people's money, but is Travel Nevada been brought to the table? I mean, if we were to get there to 250 or somewhere in that range, is there another plan? Do we have anybody else in the hopper to maybe talk to? And again, I'm all for the support. I think we just have to kind of find how we get to that number and make the jump.
Mr. Chapman, are there other partners, possible partners?
Well, if I toggle between these 2 years, there are a lot of partners at the table, and it has been a heavy lift, quite frankly, that to get to the funding levels that we have. And are there other people out there? Sure. IVGID was one, the Incline Village General Improvement District, that we tried to go after. We were told pretty full-throatedly that from their legal counsel that was outside of their ordinance responsibility. We tried to beat that one a little bit, and others as well. So yes, there are probably other partners. Are you picking up $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in those realms from like the hotel properties and such? Yes. We're a couple of months out of our winter season, and planning for that. So certainly you can always knock on more doors. But at some point, you have to knock on the big doors, and that's what I believe Tahoe is doing. Again, I don't believe Tahoe has come to this board and asked for any element such as this from a funding standpoint in my recollection. So.
Thank you. I do have a quick question, and then I see Mr. Murdoch has comments or a question also. If this was not approved, if we did not approve, were not able or did not approve the full 350 or whatever amount, would that mean that the program would not operate or would reduce its capacity dramatically, or what would be that impact? Does it go away?
I would say maybe a little of both. I've been committed to this for over 2 years now, if not longer. I don't think that commitment would stop. I would try to figure something out. I don't think it would be a very pleasant walk back to Tahoe today in that regards. But certainly, I mean, we could look at hours of operation. There are all sorts of things we could do. We try to align the program with our partners on the North Shore, because the North Shore, visitors don't give a rat's whatever about the state line. Nevada, California, they're within the whole area. So we want this system to be complementary with each other, and it's one system across the North Shore. So if our California partners are running 16 hours and we're running 4 hours a day, you know, that doesn't really work. So yeah, it had the potential of going away for sure. And I think that from a community standpoint and the business standpoint, it's been, like I said, 300,000 rides in less than 14 months is pretty astounding.
So I did just kind of want to reiterate that while Washoe RTC is not contributing maybe as much to the microtransit, they do fund the fixed route for over $300,000-something a year. So overall, they're investing upwards of $700,000 to $800,000 into the Washoe County zone of Incline Village, Crystal Bay. In transit, that can be tough. They have a huge urban area to service as well. So we do work really closely with them. And I think the important thing to remember is this is a system as a whole. Our biggest problem in Tahoe is our first mile, last mile. And we have a lot of tourism that comes and stays in our neighborhoods. And we cannot encourage them to leave the car behind, reduce VMT, save our lake, save our environment if we are not giving them viable options. And TART Connect gives them that viable option to then connect out to our mainline bus services, which service, you know, most of the ski resorts. We have one ski resort within Washoe County. Most people that are coming to stay within Incline Village are traveling out to either Olympic Valley or North Star. Getting them on buses and having them off of our roadways is completely, it's a huge goal of ours, I think, as a region. I think for you guys, beach-wise, well, it says 75%. I think that's just based on surveys where not everybody participates. So it's very hard for us to know what the tourism base is there. I know that the vans drop at the beaches in Incline Village all summer long. That is tourism based. I don't think that is your local everyday homeowner that gets to go to the beach every day. Most of them are working. So I think there is a huge tourism market here. I also know you have a huge J1 worker base that uses the services. Those employees service the guests and tourism that comes into our region. So I think, you know, while yes, this is one piece of our puzzle, the puzzle is much larger, and the funding need for our area is much larger. And really, this is a very small ask in a multi-million-dollar transit system.
Thank you. We are beyond our scheduled meeting time, and we have two of our biggest items coming up. So
Madam
I'm
Chair,
looking for.
Can I just give some information? I've been waiting to speak on this for quite some time.
You can, and I know you. I'm not saying I'm shutting it down. I'm just asking all of us to be aware of the fact we're beyond our meeting time. We're going to lose one member right now, and so if we can move along as quickly as possible, because we have two big agenda items. So yes, Mr. Murdoch, and then Mr. Lucy.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Mayor Rscva?
All right, we're just doing a mic check. Sorry, we've just had a lot of issues with technology this morning.
I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you. Charles, question for you. Of the 2 million that they give us, how much do we write Andy a check back for?
It's a
None of
great,
that.
is Courtney, are you on the line?
None of that.
None?
None of that. So we split almost 6.5%, over 6.5% of the TOT. So it's a direct 50-50 split based on NRS.
of the 2
So
million?
we get about that equal amount that comes directly to us.
So you keep 2 million and we get 2 million?
And you guys get 2 million.
Okay. I have one more. I have a solution. I've got a solution today. We have a rainy day fund. Tap it for this. This is a rainy day give.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Mr. Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple edifications, really discussions.
Of that.
As many of you know, short-term rentals are popular within Incline Village. They represent about 98% of all short-term rentals within Washoe County. About 10 years ago, the county commission did allow for the Rscva to collect room tax on short-term rentals. And just recently, under Commissioner Hill's leadership, we were able to iron out all the restrictions for that so that we were able to collect those revenues legally and without any challenges. Now, Mr. Douglas mails out to us monthly the financial reports, and as of August, the cash taxable from short-term rentals was 2.6 million, but roughly out of the 13% that of the TOT that Mr. Chapman is referring to, we received here at the Rscva roughly 175,000 of that. So we do receive quite a bit of money from the TOT at the lake. And I want to also point out, Hyatt currently is the only property up there, but there are other properties being discussed to come online very quickly within the next 2 to 3 years that will add traffic and more traffic to the bay. You know, this commission or this board has been asked privately, not only by the city of Sparks, but the city of Reno, for these types of investments. Washoe County has never come to this board with any of those. Sparks got signage at Golden Eagle and at the marina. We also gave money to the city of Reno for improvements to the downtown Reno sign. Washoe County has never made those requests of this board ever. And so I agree with Mr. Burnock that this is probably a one-time rating fund discussion. And there's a significant amount of money. It may not come out of properties up there, but out of the TOT that does, those are under 28-day short-term rental individuals. And my suggestion is maybe not the entire 350,000, Mr. Chapman, and I'm sorry to say that, but my recommendation is probably somewhere around 250,000, just because these, a lot of the transportation, as you pointed out, 75% of that is currently run by is taken by the residents. I would say that, and only about 25 to 30% by tourists. I would make sure that we are trying to fund during those high traffic periods, which are winter and summertime, not necessarily fall and spring, where we have a fall off in travel in the basin. But the basin traffic is a massive issue. We constantly are having issues with individuals bringing cars in the wintertime up there for snow removal and challenges for a number of different things. So if any ask, I think at least 250,000, and the TOT that we get on a monthly basis during the high traffic months will definitely support that. And then I would put any extra funding towards marketing to those individuals, especially short-term rental individuals, and the two properties to utilize microtransit to either get individuals to the rapid transit lines, or like Mr. Chapman said, to and from more of the popular places such as Sand Harbor, Crystal Bay, the downtown Incline Village, and Kings Beach area. So And for a lot of you, as Mr. Chapman pointed out, Uber or taxi will not transfer anybody from the state of Nevada across the state line into Kings Beach. So you cannot take an Uber, you cannot take a Lyft, and you cannot take a taxi to and from Kings Beach, which limits that ability for a lot of people. So you have to take a bus if you do not have transportation, thus putting more cars into Incline Village and the Basin. So there you go, Mr. Chapman, Madam Chair.
Can I try a motion?
Let's do a point of information for Mr. Harris.
Yeah, so just to recap what was put in the CEO report this month, we've currently grown that rainy day fund from $1 million to $1.4 million, so we're up 40%. The goal is to get to $2 million. So we have $1.4 million in that rainy day fund entering the current fiscal year. If that's how, Mr. Lucy and Mr. Murdoch had both mentioned that, I would just encourage us when we get to that finance committee that we look to replenish that, but there is some funding available in that rainy day fund.
Thank you. Ms. Raza.
I'd make a motion to go ahead and approve the $250,000 today and leave it open to go back to the finance committee. Mr. Chapman, over the next, when's the finance committee? November. If you could go and secure the additional 100, if not, then make that case to the finance committee. I really do support this. I think it's a really good thing, and you make very good points. You've convinced me today. And I think Commissioner Hill's work and Commissioner Lucy, and you're right, this board has supported the bid, which is very important, the signs. We work collaboratively as a region, Washoe, Reno, Sparks, Tahoe. I want to support this, and so that's my motion. I think the 250, and you had the ability to come back with the additional 100, maybe RTC, the county, we can meet the gap at the Finance Committee.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Yep.
I have a motion by Ms. Ferraza, a second by Mr. Rscva. Any other discussion?
My other point is, I think Jessica had a really good suggestion that for asks of this amount, that for it to go to the finance committee first to get vetted, and then they can present, because some of the questions, we didn't get straight answers, and it would be nice to see like the financials of the rainy day fund and all that worked out prior. So I think that's actually a really good idea for
From
future.
now on, that's it, and I
Okay.
told our CEO that we
Okay.
can have that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move back to where we left off. Mayor, are you on, and can we hear you, and can you hear us? So we're going to move back to item G1. She might be on mute. Okay, we're going to move, and hopefully she's on board, and maybe Hillary, if you can let us know if you're there. Really apologize for the technical difficulties, and apparently we did have a loss on our YouTube of sound for a bit of time, but a while ago we did get that back, so apologize for that. Let's move on to item G1. We're reviewing and discussing possibly taking action to approve the payment of a bonus up to $104,545.08 to the President CEO based on achievement of the fiscal year 2021-2022 CEO goals and objectives for possible action. And Molly, are you presenting this?
Well, basically, pursuant to the Rscva CEO evaluation and compensation policy, the board may pay a bonus to the Rscva CEO in its reasonable discretion based upon the achievement of the board-approved CEO goals. In your packet is the presentation of the goals that were approved by the Board of Directors on July 22nd, 2021. Fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. And with that, I will send it over to Mr. Harris to discuss the achievements of the goals.
Sure, I'm happy to walk through the sheet under G1 in your board packets. What was done was the goals and the original document that was approved by the board up through the outcomes, and the outcomes are on the last column of this document. I'm going to go through each of the goals. For goal number 1, the room night generation, The goal and the target for the year was 206,500 group room nights, which equated to 25% of the overall weighting. We finished at 215,795 group room nights, a great push at the last week, or 105% to the annual goal of 206,500. The second one under goal 1 is to produce 4 OTAs, or online travel agencies, FIT, leisure market opportunities to the hotels during the quarter. We actually developed 14 different opportunities during the year, which were outlined in my summary, which resulted in $26 million plus in room tax revenue, or 350% to the plan of the 4 opportunities for the year. In goal number 2, it was destination awareness and website sessions. The goal was to get to 2.1 million sessions, which was equated at 10% of the overall weighting. We finished at nearly 2.5 million sessions, which was 119% to the plan, so certainly finished ahead of that. Continuing on goal number 2, the increased web traffic to partner referrals, and this was an area that really exploded. We had 88,000 referrals that were there, and as we came out of COVID, the impact of events and returning to the events allowed us to get to 307% to the overall plan, or 269,846 referrals, which certainly exceeded the goal. The overall community size to grow that social media, which was weighted at 10%, 260,000 followers was our goal, and we surpassed that at 102% of that overall goal. Organizational sustainability, which was weighted at 15%. We certainly came in under budget for the year, so we did not exceed the budget, and we achieved that goal. Under item number 4, facilities management, we started out at a board budget in partnership with ASM at minus $3.796 million. This was weighted at 15%. And the 3796545 did not include augmentations, so that had to be considered with the augmentations. With the augmentations, it went to, we had several augmentations throughout the year, one on November 12th, the other one on March 4th, which finished at $6.1 million. We finished well under that, more than $1 million under that as well. And then lastly, under goal number 5, the 5%, I'm sorry, there's two parts of goal number 5, accreditation with Destinations International. We hadn't applied for accreditation since 2014. We went through more than 100 points to submit for consideration among destination executives, and we were accredited in June, thus making us one of the most outstanding or accredited and recognized in our industry. And then the last piece was develop a 3-year strategic plan, which was weighted at 5%. This entire board participated. We had our initial meeting in December. We finished that in March. And that new 3-year strategic plan was unanimously approved by the board with new mission, vision, and values. With that, I will send it back to the board chair for further.
Okay, do I have any comments, questions on the report? Mayor Rscva, are you there with us? Okay, maybe she doesn't have a comment. Yeah, can you double check, make sure she's able to get on if she wants to. Do I have any questions or comments, Mr. Rscva? Mayor Rscva, did you have a comment first? You're muted on your side. Okay, let me go ahead and move to Mr. Rscva.
And this is more for clarification, and Molly, maybe you can walk us through, and this is my first one of these going through. We use the term board discretion, but if the preset goals are hit, it's not necessarily discretionary, right? It's by contract that those get fulfilled. And my second question lead up to that is if that is the case, what is the bonus amount we're applying these percentages to? if that makes sense.
So the total bonus pool is that 545.08. That's the total bonus pool. When the board approved goals in July of 2021, those board approved goals weighted each goal, and they took the weighting at 25% of, for example, for room nights, it's weighted at 25% of bonus potential, so 25% of the $104,000. The board on the process made the determination at the time that the goals were set, that if certain goals were met, that the intention was to award a goal. The contract itself and the policy itself still provides for reasonable discretion if there are unforeseen events that occur, that there could be some reasonable discretion. But the board had already made decisions related to what would be awarded if certain goals were met.
So we're assuming it's the max amount. I mean, it just automatically goes to 35%.
It is, again, just within the reasonable discretion. What the board decides is the reasonable discretion of the board, yes. But the potential amount is up to that 35% of salary at $104,545.
And then just one last follow-up question on that. How do we handle, walk me through this on augmentations? Because does that technically mean the goal's been tweaked, right?
I am not privy to exactly how, I'm sorry, that's outside of, maybe Ben can answer exactly how augmentations are. But the goal set for example, goal number 3, organizational sustainability, states specifically that it's allowing for expense reductions and augmentations as needed. And goal 4 says the same with augmentations. So augmentations, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kennedy, but is board-approved action. So you're making a decision to make those changes at that time based upon the information that you have.
Mr. Kennedy, did you have anything further?
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think the intent is to measure the goal against the budget as augmented over the course of the year. I think that's the point of that.
Okay, and both of those goals, looking here on goal 3, allows for expense reductions. You know, if we're looking at this year with inflation, there could be expense reductions as well as augmentations, so that's all factored in to this. Okay. Other comments or questions, Mr. Murdoch?
Yeah, just one on that. Again, when we augmented the budget on the facilities, number 4, I mean, it's goal facility management. In fairness, we came out at 3.7 was the number. My question is, as we augmented it, do we augment this plan, or does that just automatically move? You know what I'm just saying, just for clarity? You understand what I'm asking? So.
I think so. So the way I read this goal is the board over the course of the year will augment the budget. It will augment the facilities budget. This goal is, Mr. Harris, did you meet the budget that the board set? So if the board augmented that budget or changed it over the course of that bonus pool year, the measure is, did you meet that budget that the board ultimately established? And so I don't know that we go back and I think this number just sort of naturally, organically changes as the budget is augmented, right? So at the end of the year, the budgeted number was to lose less than approximately 3.8. And was that done? And if the answer is yes, then I think that goal is achieved, even if 3.8 wasn't the number at the beginning of the year, but it evolved into that number through board-approved augmentations. Does that make sense?
No.
Yeah.
The board,
6.1.
It went to 6.1 on March 4th with the approval of the board. I will tell you that these are preliminary numbers that I got back. Courtney hasn't finished them, but we finished about $1.4 million under that augmented budget. So we finished around 4.689 is where we finished.
my point was just in fairness to Charles and the board, that if we do augment something, it's got to be tied back to his goals, right? I mean, it seems like you know what I'm saying to you guys? It seemed like poor Charles sitting here, he was, his task was 3.7. And then we, obviously, when the augmentations came in, we were augmenting the in-house of taking the other group out and.
Shortness of revenues from ASM I couldn't control at all, and so that's why that's part of the reason why we went to augmentations.
Okay, do I have any other questions? Ms. Raza?
Yes, the COLA, what was the percentage of the COLA? I know it's in here, but so how much did that raise your base, Mr. Harris? Because you received that with the rest of the employees, correct?
Yeah, Molly,
I've got them right here.
So I'm gonna,
3 and 4.
yeah,
it was the COLA was 3% on July 1st.
2021. And then 4.
Okay.
But that's
right, so we're sort of apples and oranges right now. So right now, this agenda item is just the goals and whether the goals were achieved and a bonus is awarded. The next agenda item is the merit adjustment to salary, which would take into account the COLA, if you want to consider that.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chapman?
Thank you. In my perspective, this is a pretty straightforward conversation. We approve these goals. Did we meet the goals? Then we have an obligation as part of our part of that. So I believe these goals have been met. Now, a question that I would have in the future were the goals the right goals and were the levels the right levels? And I think that's a conversation for a future day. But to me, this is pretty straightforward. This is what the board approved. These are the results, and this is the action that we would move forward with. So, the next conversation is a different conversation, but I think this one is pretty straightforward from that perspective.
So, Mr. Chapman, are you ready to make a motion?
I will make a motion. I will make a motion to
discussion.
approve the CEO bonus for goal outcomes for fiscal year 2021-22 for 35% for $104,545.08.
Okay, do I have a second? And then we'll move to discussion.
I would second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Chapman, a second by Ms. Silver. Discussion, Ms. Raza?
Yeah, just a couple things. I do have an issue with the community engagement portion of the goals. I've been very vocal about being transparent. I think the not having access on the Zoom, and I think all the rest of the goals have been met. That's the one I'm struggling with. Quite frankly, because that came from staff. That didn't come from the board to limit that community engagement and public participation. So and that's why I asked that question when we were doing that before. That being said, I do think bringing the facilities in-house, all of this information that you've given us, I think you've done a tremendous job that way. And I also think it takes a team, though, the entire team. And I do want to say this for the record. I think it's very important because before I got here, there were some issues with the staff taking a cut and all the things they did during COVID. I appreciate our CEO making them whole. I appreciate the CEO recognizing the team. It takes a team to make these things happen. And I think during this review, I will say that looking at that goal, you have, I think, strengthened tremendously there. My heartburn, and I agree with you, Mr. Rscva, most of us weren't here when this contract was negotiated. Over at the airport, our CEO can't go above, it was 10% bonus and then 20% at our sole discretion, and we just align that. And 35% to me is huge. I'm struggling with that. But that being said, this is what the contract was that was negotiated, and I wasn't here. But I will say on goal 5, I do think there's room for improvement on that, on our transparency. So I am going to support the motion, but I do want to say that that personally, if I had negotiated this contract, I think we're legally bound. I would have never put a percentage in like that. And the majority of the people who are sitting here today weren't here when that was negotiated. And I think there is an imbalance between what the executive staff and the staff with the organization get and our CEO. And I think that it could create a bit of friction. But that has nothing to do with our CEO. This is the contract that was negotiated. And so I'm going to support legally what was negotiated. But I do think that that bonus percentage is very high.
Thank you, Ms. Ferraza. And just a couple quick comments. I too was not here. I walked in the same day as Mr. Harris did. He was already hired and contracted when I walked in the door as well, and several of us. Mr. Rscva wasn't here, so I know that we have the ability, and Mr. Murdoch wasn't here. So we do have, which is not agendized today, but just in looking forward, any aspects of the contract, whether it's surveys, whether it's how we do this evaluation, what Mr. Chapman mentioned on re-looking at these goals again and looking at whether we want to add other bullet points to community engagement or any of them, we'll have the opportunity to do, not today, but at a later point. So I think if we take that into consideration, I think we have possibilities of today, what's before us, this was a contract. The numbers have all been exceeded, and I too feel like I definitely support the motion. And more conversation, or are we ready for a vote, Mr. Murdoch?
I support the motion, but I want to say one thing. Next go round, the committee that does the goals we can work with Charles on changing the goals or making them a little more whatever. Right,
and that would come back to the executive committee, you're right.
Absolutely, and you could do it through the executive committee. But anyway, I support the motion, and he hit his goals.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Rscva, do you have any further comments before we take a vote? I think Charles has been trying to call also to just put a phone on a speaker. So we have a motion and a second.
Actually, I wouldn't mind just.
Mr. Rscva, while we're waiting.
And again, I'll be brief with my comments. I think Jessica summed it up well.
Let me put you on speaker so Steve
Totally separate from Charles's report. I think we've had a great run. I know different challenges, different bumps along the way, but I think you've done a great job. I'm going to support it. I think we have a lot of room for improvement on this process. And the one thing that does concern me is we're going to go into the year, we've already set goals for next year. Yeah. So that train's already pulled out. So I'm going to move along with it. I think 35% for any, I think it's high, and it is not discretionary if you're saying go right to 35%. Right. So let's quit calling it discretionary. Yeah. If it's discretionary as a board, we would adapt. This is where we're strong. I'm still not totally got my head around the augmentation side, because goals are made to be set and hit and missed, and there are variables. Quite honestly, there's a number of variables in these goals that are outside of any one individual's realm, and that's not taking away from what's been achieved. I mean, the record room tax collection, there's a lot of variables, right? There's a lot of industry, global variables that are going to drive that, and sometimes you're going to hit it, sometimes you're going to miss it. That's why we have a very solid base pay off merit, and bonus should be kind of added too. But again, I'll support it, but I think moving forward, we've really got to look at this process, including the questionnaire and the surveys and all that. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rscva. Yes, do we have the mayor on?
Mayor?
Hi, Madam Chair. I'm so sorry. This has been so frustrating. So I missed half the discussion. Can you tell me where are we at right now? What's our next item?
We are currently on G1, Because you were not on board, we finished the last couple of items and circled back to the CEO bonus and then merit. So we are on G1 right now. We have a motion and a second, and we're on any discussion.
What's your next item?
G1 is up and G2 will be next.
And G2 is?
G2 is the merit. G1 is the goals. Have the goals been met? And is the bonus going to be awarded? We have a motion on the floor to accept Charles' contracted bonus of the $105,000. There's a second on that.
Well, I'm going to try to make this quickly because I keep getting knocked off. You know, this is something that I have always kind of had issues with. It's probably no surprise. It hasn't been just Charles. It's been Chris Baum. It's been Phil Balone. And here we are again. And I was the chair at the time that this contract sort of took place. And unfortunately, I had a death on the day that you had voted on it. I had had extensive conversation with Ben about it, that it really caused me heartburn and concern. I thought it was egregious. And I got to be honest with you, too. You know, Doug Thornley, who's our city manager, runs the entire city, and he doesn't even get that kind of bonus. He doesn't even get a bonus. He gets, you know, a salary. So I cannot support this. And again, I think Andy Chapman's made some, you know, very, very valid comments. And many of you were not sitting here, so I can understand the frustration. This isn't personal, but I think that, you know, we have a responsibility when it comes to being fiscally conservative with how we, you know, structure these types of contracts. So thank you. I won't be supporting.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Ms. Silver, and then I think we're ready for a vote.
Yes, thank you. Not to belabor this, but I don't think anyone sitting here that I know of was on the committee that constructed this contract. But nonetheless, we have a contract. And nonetheless, we have every opportunity to look at it going forward. But we're here today on a simple matter. There's a contract, and we are obligated to vote. But given the fact these goals have been met and exceeded, I don't see any other opportunity other than to vent frustrations of what was done in the past or could be changed in the future, but to approve it. And I think we need, for the record, to make very clear that we're doing this based on a legal obligation written in a contract, not to suggest that any of us were party to it, but we are legally obligated to do what's before us.
Thank you, Ms. Silver.
And
Ms. Raza, real brief, because we do want to move to a vote.
I understand, but Board Member Silver, that's why I did bring it up, because I just want to clarify again, this has nothing to do with Charles and the team. I think they've done a great job. It's just personally, it's causing me the heartburn that 35%. And because I wouldn't have supported that. But that's why I thought it was important for the record. But we're legally bound if he's met those performance goals. So but I thought it was important, this is a public body, to express that bonus amount is way too high. And I hope we can work with our CEO in the future on that issue.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Farasa. We have a motion, a second. I think we've had all of our additional comment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The mayor was opposed. And we have 5-1, correct? Because we've lost Mr. Lucy and we lost Ms. Keel. So that would be, am I right, or is it? 6-1. Sorry. Math is not my forte. Get me into language and I'm good. Okay, 6-1, the motion passes. We're going to go ahead and move on to our last action item, which will be G2, is the, moving on to the reviewing the CEO's annual performance, determine a percentage adjustment to the CEO's annual salary is a merit pay increase, an amount to be determined by the Board of Directors. Molly, do you need to guide us on that? Anything you need us to know?
No, this is just the time and place to have the merit discussion and the performance evaluation for Mr. Harris on his performance over fiscal year 21-22. And as part of that, the Board of Directors may increase the CEO's salary as a merit pay increase.
Okay, let's go ahead and open this for discussion. This would be the surveys, the executive survey and the board survey. I had a couple of comments. I think as I looked through them, the looking at the charts that would show just agree, disagree, or neither, those were helpful. And obviously something that I needed to look at as we look at the decision on merit pay. I think the comments were more helpful to me, and the comments that were made both by the executive staff and by the board, I thought were really, most of them were really positive, had a good insight, gave me more to really look at on my consideration besides my personal opinion, is looking at the opinions of both groups and what the comments they added to the discussion, as well as a few things that need to be worked on. And I don't think there's any one of us here that there's not room for improvement. I mean, that's human nature, and all of us can be better at what we do as an organization, as individuals. So a couple I thought constructive things that were added as well. So those comments helped me as I was looking at the overall. But I thought overall on both sides, it was positive, more agreeing, a few in the middle, but positive comments overall. So those are my only comments. Do I have other comments, Ms. Ferrazzo?
Yeah, and this one, I am not going to support a merit increase. Based on the 35% bonus, this is discretionary, this one, and it is up to the board, and Mr. Harris did get a COLA increase. And so I feel that that is good compensation. And again, I think we've rated his performance. The survey speaks for itself, and I may be in the minority on that, but that is where I stand personally.
Other comments? Ms. Silver? I see you reaching for the button.
Yeah, I have a lot of comments, but I have to figure out how to phrase them. You know, I think this year has been, or the tenure of Mr. Harris has been clouded by a lot of issues, many of which I know that Rick and Stephen and I participated in trying to resolve and set a new tone and perhaps a new way of moving forward. I think we are still caught in a negative spiral because we keep saying it's not personal and it's not about Mr. Harris, but there are many individuals, and I'll use the airport CEO quite frankly, who was given an extended contract and a significant pay increase. That didn't make the newspapers. So I don't think, while many of us make nothing like this money, I don't think we should be sitting here saying, you know, this is too much or not enough. To suggest that Mr. Harris met and exceeded every single goal, and that the comments were, I would say, 75% positive, and then to deny a merit increase doesn't really square with what I know in terms of performance evaluations for employees, period. And I've been in that business a very, very long time of giving merit increases and a bonus. If anything, I think we should have looked at merit first and then bonus. But that's not the way it was put to us. But I don't think we should confuse the amount of money that looks very big to some of us on a bonus with his right to have a merit increase based on performance, period.
Thank you, Ms. Silver. Other comments? Mr. Rscva?
No?
I don't know if, I'm gonna add a lot to the discussion. It's a very unique position. So I'm sensitive to what Board Member Silver is saying. I will say, in looking at the hiring date through COLAs alone, not merit, but there's been 20K plus in increases, and then through bonuses, or now, after the last motion, there's been over 150,000 in bonuses. So I want to be fair to all parties, but I could be convinced either way, but I'm also inclined to, I'm good with the recent COLA, and it went through staff, correct? It went through the whole staff. I'm good with, calling it a day.
Mr. Chapman, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that I followed Mr. Rscvaga's conversation on this. There was a COLA received, and I work in this space and I participate in a lot of organizations where, the CEOs, we all gather, and, that's, there has been a COLA increase for this year, and that tends to be where they are at right now. It's where I have seen it, that's where I've experienced it personally, and that's where I've seen it with other destinations. And again, not to, one destination is always different than the other, but there has been a July 1 COLA increase, and that seems like that's appropriate.
Mr. Murdoch?
I agree with both comments from Andy and Stephen. I think 7% over 2 years.
It's only 1 year that you're looking at.
Well, you got the 3%.
New fiscal year.
Yeah, okay, got it. I agree. We gave him full bonus, $100,000. I think it's very fair in the market today.
Okay. I'm going to add some closing comments, and I agree with Ms. Silver. Those are cost of living, and we did offer them to employees also. Have been several cost of living, which cost of living is cost of living. And we're going to be looking at probably bigger COLAs if inflation continues as it is. And that's a big, fiscally, that's a tough thing to look at. So cost of living is really reflected of what the cost of living increases are that we all bear. So I look at that in a totally different bucket as merit. And this is asking us to evaluate performance. And I think that is a big number. And I know, say for our city manager gets a 3 to 5% merit increase, but no bonuses. But our city manager is running a city, is the administrator and operational head of our city. This is a different position. This is really sales. This is what Mr. Larragueta does. It's sales. And the performance-based is like a salesperson bases their salary on what the performance is and what the numbers are that increase our bottom line because of the work that they're doing. So it's hard when some of us come from a different industry, the airlines, which, never, at least at my level, you would see that. The casinos where my husband worked, there weren't bonuses of that magnitude. And so for looking at it differently of what this job is, it is sales, and it's the performance, Charles' performance that he brought to this organization, but it is the team. I mean, it is the team that he put in place. It's the great people that are heading up our departments, all of them that are working to really improve and generate all those numbers we saw on the first chart. So the first chart shows all those were exceeded. And so the performance has been exceeded and met. And I'm ready for a discussion after, as we look forward on bonus and on Charles' contract that we can have another day. I agree that seems like a big number, but when you look at what did our performance mean dollar-wise, it's significant. So significant financial impact on this organization, and I look at this item as solely measuring that annual performance, and does he deserve a merit for that? And I'm not looking at a 10% number. I know we're 3% for and COLAs for our city manager, and so he's the operational head, but that performance metric, I think, he's exceeded. exceeded, and so really, on an evaluation, I mean, I would support, and nationwide too. We got some information on other DMOs and what their CEOs are making, and he's down below what a lot of them are. There's some making $600,000, and I know it's the market, it's the cost of living in other jurisdictions. So it's hard to, those aren't comparing the same things, it's apples to oranges, but really it's not, because if you look in the marketplace of CEOs for DMOs, his salary is not particularly high, and the bonus isn't either. And in looking at those other DMOs, they said the average, there were some higher, some lower, was a 3 to 5%, much like we do in the city. So, I'd probably be looking at a 3%, maybe 2%, but some type of merit increase to recognize that he's met the performance that we've asked him to meet. So those are my comments. Do I have other comments? Ms. Ferrazza?
I do want to address what Board Silver said, because again, the airport, I just went through this, and I'm all for longevity and those types of things. I mean, when you're doing, I think those are good things. And again, I helped negotiate that contract, but there was nowhere near the amount of bonus. I mean, you can look at it if we want to go page for page. So to me, 35% and what Mr. Griffin got for a bonus is completely apples and oranges, and it's solely at the discretion of the board. But that being said too, I'm happy to look at this in future contracts, something like that. And I think the merit, because there is a difference, because it goes towards the PERS and the entire package. So I do get that, but we didn't have that before. And again, if that wasn't, if we didn't have that percentage amount, I'm sorry, I believe that was that 35%, and the fact the board approved that, we are saying that you're exceptional. 35% is exceptional. So to take anything away from that would be ridiculous. I'm sorry. We just supported a 35% bonus. I think that tells you where the board is and what we think of your performance and your team. That's all I'm going to say, Mr. Erickson.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
I would just like to comment that from a human resources perspective, and possibly Molly would agree with me, there's a difference between a merit increase, a COLA, and a bonus, terminology-wise. And a merit increase does increase one's base forever, and it's then built upon. Bonus is a one-time amount, heavily taxed, by the way, at a very high percentage. So it looks like a very large number. What Mr. Harris will net from that is nowhere near that. So I think, based on my understanding of merit increases, which speak to the value, the capability of retaining someone who, as Ms. Ferrazza has said, we deem exceptional, merits a merit increase. And so I would make a motion for a 3% merit increase.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. I will go ahead and second that motion. Any more discussion or a vote? All those in favor?
Just a quick.
Oh, Mr. Chapman?
So, and I think within that conversation, we do have to recognize the COLA that has already been there, because that COLA did happen at July 1st for the last year. So we're talking a 7% increase. I know it's COLA and then the 3%. So just recognizing for the record that there was a 4% on top of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. 2. I guess we'll 2 in favor. So Ms. Silver, myself in favor. All those opposed?
No. No.
Okay, so we have a motion fails. What is our total? Because we've got one more on the 5-2. Motion fails by 5-2 vote. Okay, thank you. We are going to move on. We've covered our last, the other 2 items, G3, G4 have been covered. We are on H, which is board member announcements, reports or updates.
Do I have any board members have an announcement or request?
Sales team from earlier, if we could get the, somehow, and maybe, I think, Charles, you had said that it was the sales team, the entire sales team, as we had mentioned earlier, San Diego. We could, even an introduction by Zoom. They don't have to fly in, nothing but like that, but it'd be great to know the work that they're doing. That'd be awesome.
Madam Chair, just one item for future agenda. We had that conversation. I think, I understand, Mr. Harris, your contract is through another year. I think we need to start that conversation, given the conversation around the table today as well, sooner rather than later, which is probably through the executive committee, I would imagine, but, kind of hoping that we can see some movement on moving that forward, because obviously we want to, have a future CEO that is on board and moving forward, and I know we'll be moving towards the last year of that contract.
Okay, and we've already mentioned in earlier conversations on the funding for the micro transit that we would look at possible future meeting of the finance committee to consider that as we look at budget augmentation. So finance committee, executive committee will be meeting, and the date to be set. Mr. Rscva or Ms. Silver?
I'm sorry, I don't have a button on. Sorry.
Madam Chair and Mr. Harris, I do think, and I don't know how we put through the request, but we have all heard from the Western Heritage Association. I do think there's a lot of moving parts to this plan that they shared with us. I do think there's going to be a point where the board has to give direction, I think, to staff, either, yes, let's try to find a way of working with other being at the table with the community on the efforts that they shared with us. I want to say, was that our retreat back in November, December? Is that right? Or no, when was it? December, okay. But I think is funding sources are moving. There's federal dollars. There's a very small window. We may decide that we don't want to participate, or there may be another element that falls apart. But I do think for the next meeting, it'd be worth reaching out to that group and seeing what our next steps are and what the project is looking at.
Okay, what might help also, because I've been meeting with Mr. DiLoretto and the group, is there's a lot more information that they have that's so kind of updated where they are financially and from all different sources, whether, but there's more info to be shared than we got of just the initial concept. It was just conceptual, and it's trying to move forward now, so we will look at that for a future agenda. Mr. Murdoch.
I'd like to look at, is there anything that Mr. Harris needs going forward in the facilities? For instance, anything like extra volleyball courts or basketball courts, or if we do an NCAA basketball tournament with the university someday where we bring in 10 powerhouse teams from all over the country, is there any need for that to be studied and get back to us for maybe needs you may foresee in the future, Charles?
Want me to comment? So we do have a feasibility study that was just finished on a project that might be brought forward to the board for consideration. That is certainly something that we are looking at as a potential need. I did meet with President Sandoval recently and looking for partnership and to further those things. So as those needs are crystallized, I can come back to the board or the finance committee or whatever it may be for consideration.
Okay. Okay, looks like that item is closed. We're on item I. Comments from the floor by the public. Do we have any public comment?
None at this time.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we still have, I thought she dropped off. We've got the mayor on for another comment.
It's been sort of really challenging. But I wanted to ask, first of all, I could hear Darren's presentation. I was trying to weigh in at that point. I just wanted to say, We are so fortunate to have Darren. He's been amazing to work with, but I don't know if anyone asked the question, and I would love to bring it back to the board, someone from the airport to talk about what their customers are. Can you hear me? Hold on.
We can hear you, Mayor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry again. Technology, we only had 2.5 years to figure it out. Okay, so I would love for someone from the airport to come and bring what their customer service plan is for all the construction. I don't know if that was talked about. Like I said, I heard most of his presentation, but not all of it. But I think that would be really helpful.
And I believe, and Jessica can probably add, I believe there's a survey about to go out that you're working with the community. So the airport is working on that now, so they might not have anything to report to us right now.
Okay,
Jessica?
well, when they do, that would be great if they would come back and give us an update. So
Okay.
thank you.
I think what she's talking about, and actually I should have asked this, very important, is the coordination. And Charles, I know your team in airport, because it's going to be torn up, the airport.
Yeah.
So making sure that they have a good experience and the way they flow through with the construction and going up to Tahoe, all that stuff. So I'm glad you brought that up, Madam Mayor, because I do think that's important. I don't know if it has to come back necessarily for presentation, but Charles, I think just working on that and maybe Rscva and directional signage, just, and you had mentioned this, when you have such a big, I mean, we're gonna be tearing up the terminal. So
Yeah.
I think, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that's very, very important, how we coordinate that, and maybe a different presence at the Rscva, some rah-rah or something like that. But no, to make that so the construction and how that's coordinated with the Rscva.
And Darren did mention, and I don't know if we can help with our messaging through our marketing efforts, that he talked about messaging and how important it's going to be so that people know when they're going to the airport, just like our roads. The roads are all torn up, knowing where to go, how much time to allow, preparing people before and making it a real high visibility messaging to people who live here, but to all of our businesses and groups coming in to make the navigation a little bit easier, I think is critical. Was there anything, Christina, you needed to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that I know this will be a much larger construction project than what's currently happening there, but we do currently work with the airport to put up destination imagery instead of those ugly construction signs. So as people are walking through, it's big murals of our destination, and so we provide them with imagery and support. But yes, as this construction project goes underway, we will definitely be working closer with them and hopefully come up with some fun activations that we can partner on.
Okay, does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yes, thank you so much. And I've got to run
Okay.
to another meeting. So I want to say, Ben, thank you so much for letting me use your phone. You're amazing. I really, really appreciate it. We can send a man to the moon, but we can't keep him connected via Zoom. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great
Okay,
day. Bye.
thank you. So we have, moving on, item I, no comments from the public. Moving on to item J, my favorite motion, is adjournment. We are adjourned.